Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the DN WhatIf 3.0, with another fanfiction. This is the movie of What If Deku adopted by Nighteye. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details, and go to the story link to say hi to the author. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now, let's get into the fanfic. Murai Sasaki never accepted Midoriya as All Might's successor, and the next person to hold one for all. He thought the boy was too reckless. He broke his bones while using it for fuck's sake. He tried to persuade All Might to choose Mirio, but when that didn't work, he took matters into his own hands and offered the first year a spot in his agency for work studies. Murai wanted the boy to give up the quirk and give it to Mirio. It was that simple of a plan. When Midoriya first arrived, Murai already knew he disliked the boy. He was a quirkless kid, given one of the most rare quirks in history on a silver plate, and he didn't have an ounce of control while using it. Even though, for his plan to work, he had to offer him an internship, and Murai was not going to give the golden boy this opportunity that easily, so he challenged him. And he outright failed, though he did surprise Murai when he started bouncing off the walls. Must have went to Gran Torino then, he thought. Though there was something weird about Midoriya when he started using the quirk. First, even though there was green lightning surrounding him, he looked as he were floating around, and his hands looked a bit black in moving. Though Murai dismissed that as being a weird aspect of One for All, no one really understood the quirk. He wasn't going to now. And the second thing was a slight, dark mark on his left shoulder from when he was reaching for the stamp. Though once again, the foresight user ignored that, chucked it up as a training mistake. Oh, how wrong he would be when he finds out. And so, Murai still offered the boy an internship. He had a plan. He needed to follow through with it. Day by day, he disliked the boy even more. His smile was somehow brighter than All Might and Mirio combined. His determined face when Murai gave him work to do that even Mirio wasn't able to do and finishing it was astounding. He would never admit that out loud to anyone. He could admit to himself and see that the boy was smart. Too smart to only be fourth in ranking in his class. After a little bit of research, he wasn't going to allow some random kid in his agency, even if he were All Might's successor. So he did a background check and found nothing unusual. Days turned into weeks, and Murai was never going to say anything, but the boy's actions were alarming to say the least. When he started to get really curious, was a few minutes ago, when he overheard a weird conversation between both his interns when he went to retrieve them from the training room to do more work. Murai had more work for Midoriya and Mirio. Instead of sending Centipter, he went himself. The closer he got, the louder their voices became. Now, Murai has obviously wanted to soundproof the training areas, but he never found time, what with his job, his patrols, and he never bothered with it, because no one had complained about anything before. He was sure no one was about to start now. That's so awesome, came Mirio's voice first. You managed to beat me alone. No one has ever done that before. Murai was surprised. Midoriya managed to beat Mirio in a spar. That was simply impossible. Though from the looks here's of it, he did. It was nothing. I just remembered the moves you did when we fought the first time. And watched the sports festival you were in. Took a lot of time to find it, but I did, at the end. I loved analyzing your quirk the first time saw it. And his words started to become mumbles. Murai had no way of hearing anything. He could tell Mirio had, as he was in front of the boy. I never thought of doing that. Good idea. The third year replied to something the green-haired said. Might be impossible. I have a friend of mine to make it for you, if you want. Murai wouldn't have had to be in there to know the boy was looking at the floor. Though he hated to admit, he was curious about what they were talking about. Then came Mirio's excited voice. Really? That'd be awesome. Man, I have an amazing kuhai, Say Midoriya. Why yes, stuttered the younger boy. He needs to work on his stutter, thought Murai. Why did you choose Deku as your hero name? You don't really sound like you like it. Some sort of reaction was made on Midoriya's face, because Mirio stated to frantically say, Sorry if I'm overstepping little kuhai. I asked because the name doesn't have a good meaning to it. Murai had to admit, when he first found out about the boy's hero name, he was taken aback, then thought maybe Midoriya was that stupid to pick a name that literally translates to useless, wooden doll. He was quite shocked to hear what was said next. Oh, yeah, I know what it means. Friend? The words came out as a question. Gave it to me when I was a kid. It kinda stuck with him for years, and when I came into UA, someone gave it a new meaning, with a totally different name. I was actually going to change it. I'm not so sure I can do that right now. The former sidekick doubted the friend he was talking about was a nice person. Giving someone a name that means useless. What kind of child does that? Mori stopped his thoughts and listened to what his intern was saying. And even though he disliked the younger boy, he was proud of Mirio for helping. He knew he had to make his plan go faster than it was going now. Well, I have an idea. Give me the name. We'll go to Aizawa and Kayama-sensei to change it tomorrow morning before coming here. How does that sound? Why you would do that for me? Came the disbelieving tone in his question. Of course, little Kuhai. Once again, Murai would not have to have looked to see his intern's smile. Oh, it's Deku. Murai had to admit, a hero name that meant you can do it was a whole lot better than a name that means useless. All right, Deku. Just call me Lemillion. As amusing and heartwarming this conversation was, they both had work to do, and that would have ruined the main point he came here for. And so, Murai opened his door to see two sons in the room. Wait, no. That was only Mirio and Midoriya. The latter looked at him first, hearing him come in, even though Murai was sure he never made a sound, because Mirio wasn't even aware of him, until Midoriya looked at him, with fear in his eyes. And wasn't that disturbing? He decided to file that reaction for later. He didn't have time to deal with the boy who would soon lose the quirk to his best intern. Both of you are done training for the day. Murray started only looking at Mirio, nodded. He continued. Get yourselves cleaned up, and go up to my office to work. The assignments are on your desks. And with that, Murray went out, and never looked back. Now, the three of them sat in his main office. Murray was working on a case Sakachi sent him that man had to stop sending him work. He was too lazy to do himself. When the interns started talking, as usual, Mirio started the conversation, which Murray has come to realize that now, the younger boy only ever spoke when someone spoke first. He didn't think about it, but that was the second thing he decided to put beside him and work on later. Since their desks were behind on the farthest wall, he couldn't see them, but he could hear their voices well. His office was empty, bar the three of them. Can I see your assignment? I think I made a mistake trying to find something. Oh, Midoriya startled. Why would he startle a lot? And now came the third thing he noticed about Midoriya. He was too jumpy. The boy reeked anxiety. Sure. Here you go. He could hear paper being moved. When Murai remembered that the case he gave Midoriya was on his level, meaning Mirio would not understand it. 1. He knew that because when Mirio tried doing it a few weeks ago and gave up on his first try. 2. Did Midoriya really finish it? That was a case even Murai took his time in solving it. It took high weeks. Now a 15-year-old boy comes and does it in 2 days. Not even 2 days. He gave Midoriya that assignment 29 hours ago. How the fuck there had to be a mistake somewhere? Wait, that's the paper I tried to do a few weeks ago. You finished it? How? Disclaimed Mirio. Well, panicked Midoriya. Now he had to put stuttering on the list. Their quirks weren't that hard to figure out. The woman with cat eyes had a mental type quirk because the victim was twitching every time he talked to her. The man with antenna on his head had a magnetic quirk. From the video I could see the victim's phone slightly moving, maybe picking up a signal or something. And the other man next to the woman was a mutation. He had fangs and claws, but that wasn't his quirk. His had something to do with mental stability. That's actually how I found out the woman and him were related. The man with the antenna had somehow a connection to the victim. Made sense as to why he killed him. Maybe relative, friend, bully. Most likely bully because he was angry when he talked to him. Did that made sense? Yeah, came the dazed reply from Mirio. Wow, little Kuhai, you're pretty smart. And no. Anyone could have done it. I just looked at what they gave me. That helped more. And on came the denial of his smarts. Murai came to a realization. One he didn't like one bit. He just hoped he is wrong. And if he spent the next few weeks figuring out what was going on, that was no one's business but his own. No bubble girl, he never liked the boy, and he will never like him. Today was one of Murai's agency's big break. Those days weren't rare, but they weren't common either. He, Mirio and Bubble Girl usually go out to eat lunch in a restaurant and relax. This time he wanted to invite Midoriya. He convinced himself it was out of pity because he invited one intern, why not the other? Speaking of his intern, Mirio came in with a nervous Midoriya behind him. So sir, started his enthusiastic intern. Is Midoriya coming with us today? See, coming where? Midoriya looked from the pro hero to his senpai confused. Mirio was the one answer him before the Murai opened his mouth. We have these day breaks a few times a year where Sir Bubble and I go out to eat. And this year you'll be joining us. Are you sure I could? Definitely, little Kuhai. Sir was planning on telling you, but I ruined it, haha, sorry. His third-year intern didn't look apologetic at all, which made Murai's lips twitch, as if he were going to smile. Okay then, I'll go and see if Bubble Girl is ready, then we'll go. He nodded at Mirio as he left. Looking ahead at his second intern, he saw Midoriya flinch at his look. Was he that scared of Murai? God, what did he do the kid? Murai didn't care. He didn't. An awkward silence fell, and the room suddenly became more tense. Instead of staying here, with Midoriya analyzing the pro-hero for some reason, Murai opened his mouth, and in his usual deadpan voice he said, "Let's not make them wait any longer. I'm pretty sure they're ready." Relief was evident on the boy's face, even if it looked like he tried his hardest to not show it. They went out the office and met Mirio and Bubble Girl down at the main hall. An excited voice rang as they both stopped in front of them. "Ah, Sir and Midoriya are here. I have the best restaurant you three need to try." Bubble Girl smiled. "This is your first time coming with us, Midoriya, right?" The boy looked at her, laughing nervously, and Murai has yet to find out what he was nervous about all the time. "Why, yeah," he scratched his head. "Are you excited?" "I know I am." His secretary giggled. Murray sighed at her. How can someone be this energetic all the time? He didn't know. "Well," he started. "Let's not wait any longer if you're—" Murray sighed again, and with a voice that clearly said, "Kill me," he continued, excited to go Bubble Girl. That got him a small laugh from the two, and a smile from Midoriya, which he felt proud of himself. "Wait, what? Since when did he?" Bubble Girl hooked her arm with the boys and walked out of the agency with both Murai and his older intern behind her, hearing her talk. "All right, so this place isn't far at all. It's just down the block, and it has this amazing noodle bowl which I love. Have I ever told you that I love noodles? What's your favorite food and what's your—" If Murray had more energy, or was alive for that matter, he would have listened, but instead, he shut her voice out and noticed Mirio walking next to him in silence, just how he liked it. Mirio was one of the first interns he ever had, and probably the best one too. His reason for choosing him wasn't all that good, but the boy was a carbon copy of All Might. His control over his quirk was impressive, and sure, it took Murray 2 years of training him to get to that point, but still. He chose Mirio to show the former #1 hero that there would be a next All Might, and not some quirkless teenager. Even so, Murai's mind slowly left Mirio's improvement, and his thoughts started running about Midoriya's. He was a smart kid, that he could admit, but was one for all a good thing for him? Maybe. And that thought made him stop in his tracks, making Mirio look at him in concern. He dismissed him with a wave of his hand, and the two continued walking, still listening to Midoriya talking excitedly about her quirk, while taking notes in a notebook, which Murai didn't know when and where he got it from. Midoriya deserves one for all. That thought alone made Murai wonder if he should have given Midoriya a chance without thinking of Mirio the first time he came. Maybe somewhere out there, he would have dismissed that thought, but right now, in this second, he let himself ask, what if Murai had been wrong? He looked over the facts in his head. Midoriya was smart, and maybe too smart to not be ranking first in his class. That was established the other day. Midoriya knew how to plan well. He helped with a case without knowing, and the villain was apprehended at the end of the day. All Might was, and Murai hated admitting it, not the best type of planner when it came to fighting. His best course of action was smash everything in sight, or in other words, he hated hearing "clench your butt," yell out "smash," and hope for the best. Mirio wasn't any better either. He sometimes hesitates in front of danger, and that usually leads to some mistakes. But then again, who doesn't make mistakes? And in a fight, he only thinks of the situation in front of him, rather than think outside the box. Midoriya was good at analysis, even if he didn't show it. There had been multiple cases where he would find the kid talking, muttering more like it. His voice was just so small about a person or analyzing their quirks, and Murai wasn't blind to what his employees thought. He often found others being questioned and complimented by Midoriya about their quirks, and he always gave some kind of use for them, and makes every single person feel special about their quirk. Midoriya was, and oh did that make Murai hate himself for not noticing earlier, a good kid. He was genuinely kind and wraps people around his fingers, oblivious to it all. Bubble Girl is turning blue because of his compliments that are still going. How does not realize he was throwing up a comment after comment? Murai didn't know. Midoriya also had his way with others. He was persuasive and, dare he say it, manipulative. Then again, wasn't everyone? After All Might apologized, the former hero admitted that Midoriya was the one to convince him to do so, even if the argument wasn't partly his fault. Murai wasn't liking the fear in the boy's eyes every time the Foresight hero talked, or even looked in his direction. And he knew he was in the wrong for this. And for the first time in years, he let himself forget about One for All and giving it to Mirio, and start to think about how that quirk was good for Midoriya. He didn't get to think about that, because the restaurant Bubble Girl, or Bubbles, as she'd just been given a nickname by Midoriya. What, since when suggested, was in front of them. They opened the door, and immediately the smell hit them all at once. It was a particularly good one, since Mirai had never seen Midoriya look this relaxed. And the restaurant was it only had one person sitting on table and multiple workers. They went and sat at table, Midoriya in the booth, next to Bubble Girl with Mirai and Mirio across them. A young waiter, clearly still in high school, came and greeted them. "Hello, and welcome to. What would you like to order today?" "Oh, I'll take my usual." The waiter nodded at Bubble Girl and wrote whatever she ordered. "And Midoriya, ooh. They have the best catsuit here, Mido. See?" The boy was making friends left and right without knowing. His blinding smile and shining eyes usually helped with that. Mirai wanted to bet. "Sure, thanks Bubbles," and he smiled. God damn it. Mirai was hating himself even more. He could see the waiter blush at the boy, which made Mirai want to either kill him or himself. That was a tough decision to make. And Mirai wasn't the only one glaring at that waiter. Mirio was giving him the nastiest look he ever saw on his intern's face. And so, he quickly placed his and Mirio's order after he told him he wanted the same thing as Midoriya. And if the glares weren't sending a message, the waiter was definitely fearing his life now, if his white face had anything to do with it. He practically ran to the kitchen. The only good thing about that whole interaction was that the occupants of the other seats were happily talking without a care in the world. Mirio turned to look at Mirai, and in the most serious voice he ever heard, he managed to whisper, "I'm sorry you had to see that, sir. It's just that Aizawa-sensei told me to protect him and to take care of him if he was ever in that kind of situation." He lost his serious voice, smiled widely, then went to talk to Midoriya and Bubble Girl. Aizawa was soft for a student. Mirai would have laughed if he himself wasn't starting to go soft for the boy too. This is not how he wanted things to go. "Midoriya, is that you?" A voice from the table next to them exclaimed. "Oh my god, you guys, it's Deku." The three of them, sans Midoriya, who was trying to make himself alarmingly smaller, looked over and saw a group of 4 teenagers laughing mockingly. Another boy started. "How's Yua? I still can't believe someone as useless as you got in Yua and a quirk. Did you steal it from someone like that big villain that All Might fought?" And the rest laughed with him. "Did mommy and daddy hit you again? Should have killed yourself when you had the chance." Mirai was definitely killing someone today. If it wasn't himself or his old thoughts, then it's the waiter. If it wasn't the waiter for blushing at a boy who should stay innocent from all that shit called dating, it's the 4 teenagers sitting there and acting as if a serious accusation, as this one, was funny. Bubble Girl immediately got up and started screaming at them for saying such thing. Mirio wasn't that far behind her, and wasn't that news to Mirai. He never saw his intern looking that mad before. Murray, however, went over to the cashier at the front, showed her his Pro Hero license, and demanded in a hard voice that the nuisances be banned from the restaurant and for the food to be packed. Maybe using his hero privileges like that wasn't all that heroic, but really it was either that or committing murder. He went over to the table after taking the food to see multiple things happening. Both Bubble Girl and Mirio were in a teary Midoriya's arms being held back, without the use of his quirk. The waiter from before pointing at the door wanting the idiots out. An elderly lady, sitting alone before, got up and was shouting in a loud voice how horrible the kids are for saying such things. Mirai wanted everything to stop. But before he could open his mouth, a voice over speakers echoed throughout the tiny place. "Would the 4 people who started this please come to the manager's office?" No one heard a thank you after that. It was silent when the teens went to the back, following the waiter. Another waiter came and started apologizing furiously to them and the old lady for the commotion. The person who told Midoriya to kill himself was apparently the manager's grandson, and was currently being told his punishment, along with his friends. After telling them that the food was on the house, Mirai, Bubble Girl, who hugged Midoriya right after the silence, and hasn't let go since then, Mirio and Midoriya went out to the streets for some much-needed fresh air. A teary Bubble Girl was hugging a sniffling Midoriya, while Miro was rubbing his back. Mirai let himself rethink about everything that happened. Someone as useless as you got in Yua. Midoriya was anything but useless. And even if he hadn't got One for All, he would have made a fantastic first quirkless hero. Mirai could bet his life on that. Did mommy and daddy hit you again? Was Midoriya abused? Another thought got in his head. Wasn't Midoriya still with his parents? Is he still being abused? should have killed yourself when you had the chance. And that led Murray to believe he was severely bullied, if the bait was said so casually. Yeah, Murray was definitely committing murder. The four of them walked back to the agency in silence. Murray could tell the dark thoughts swimming in a scowling Mirio's head, and the sad frown on Bubble Girl's face, who has not let go of Midoriya. Speaking of Midoriya, the boy was still sniffling with tears streaming down his face. Murray wanted to comfort him, but thought better as he wasn't a people's person, especially to Midoriya right now. He was clearly holding back his sobs by biting his lip and drawing blood. They arrived at the agency and silently went up Murray's office. After closing the door, Bubble Girl sat down on a couch close to the door with Midoriya between her and Mirio. Murray sat on a chair next to them and would have brought up the dreaded subject if Bubble Girl didn't speak first. Did they know you? She realized what she asked and shook her head. I mean, why would, cutting herself off. She sighed and corrected herself. You know them, right? I mean, you knew not no sorry. She apologized with a bitter smile on her face. Because why else would they say those horrible things to you? Midoriya seemed to realize she was talking to him. Why, yeah. His voice sounded small. Murray never wanted to hear him talk that way. They were W with me I in M middle school. They, He bit lip and whispered, looking at the floor in interest. They weren't very nice. If calling someone useless and telling him to kill himself, while also stating his parents were, or are still abusive, was not very nice, then Murray was downright terrified to find out what his version of horrible is. God knows what they did before he came to Yua. Murray took a deep breath looking at Mirio and Bubble Girl. Leave Midoriya and I alone for a while. I would like to talk to him. Give us a few minutes. His secretary looked ready to kill her boss. But after taking a deep breath, she still got up to leave with Mirio. But not before hugging Midoriya again. They never closed the door behind them. And if they had just been more careful, they could have avoided the confrontation in the future. Speaking of Midoriya, the poor boy was still looking at the ground, trying not to cry. In those few seconds of silence, he went over what he should say. Murray obviously needed to apologize first and foremost, then bring up the topic about his middle school and parents. Midoriya, he started, earning him a jump from said boy, while discreetly drying his tears. First, I would like to apologize, which had the green-haired boy look at him in disbelief that made Murray think that he was never apologized to by an adult. Murray swallowed his pride and cursed his inability to talk. He cleared his throat before continuing. I should have gave you a fair chance the first day. I only saw you as a quirkless. When he said that word, Midoriya flinched, and that led Murray one step closer to finding out. Middle school boy who has been given one of the most strongest quirk in the world. Midoriya opened his mouth to talk, but Murray held his hand, supporting a weird look on his face. He was sure he looked a bit constipated. Please, let me finish. He took another breath and realized how shit he was at communication. Of all the things he had to do in his life, apologizing to a high school boy was not one of them. Still, he continued. Over the course of few weeks, I noticed that I should have put your quirk aside and only see what you would do. He never noticed he called one for all Midoriya's quirk, but Midoriya did. Murray was apologizing as it was the right thing to do. But he still couldn't say, or rather believe, that he thought one for all deserved Midoriya, just as Midoriya deserved one for all. He was in the wrong, but to be able to fix that wrong, he wanted to admit it first. Then have his intern show him the notebooks and his analytical abilities in the back of his mind. Murray was just a tiny bit excited to hear what Midoriya would say about his quirk. Foresight. Just a bit. I judged you on your quirk, not as a person, and for that I am sorry. He bowed his head. It's fine, sir. I'm used to it by now. Murray didn't like the sound of that. Still, the boy continued. I never had an adult, say sorry before, and I never thought you'd be the first, sir. He realized what said and immediately started waving his hands around his head. I'm sorry, that's not what I meant, sir, forgive me, huh? Midoriya stopped talking the moment he heard Murray's chuckles, which was unusual on its own because the boy was never given even a smile from the Foresight user. The latter still wore a small smile. It's fine, Midoriya, I know what you meant. Though is alarming how many things were wrong with what happened. Midoriya was back to his nervous self. Tell me, was your school life like that? The young green-haired intern started to spit out excuses that weren't working on the pro at all. They exaggerated a little bit. It wasn't like that at all. It was actually a good middle school life, and he stopped to look at Murray. You don't believe me at all, do you, sir? And Murray shook his head. Not one bit, kid. He sighed. At least tell if you're safe with your parents. Or what they said about hitting you is true. He knew it was true, but Murray wanted to believe that it wasn't. For one moment, where Midoriya was clearly thinking hard about his answer. And hey, maybe if Mirai didn't realize what he did wrong and apologized, Midoriya wouldn't have said anything. In that moment though, right in this second, the words being whispered, "Why yes it's true," changed something, and the world shifted. Midoriya began wiping the tears that started streaming down his face again. And Mirai wasn't thinking. He couldn't. He did not, however, let his emotions get the best of him, and did what he always used to do: keep them down. Turning his logical part of his brain, he was able to carry out and keep the conversation. "How about we talk about this tomorrow, when you've calmed enough?" And he muttered his next sentence, "And I don't have the tendency to kill anyone." Midoriya sniffled, letting out a small huh. That Mirai dismissed with a wave of his hand. Earlier, Murray nodded at him to keep going. "You," Midoriya sniffled, wearing a small smile. "You called it my quirk. Not the quirk or that quirk like you did before." He bit his lip in wonder. "You wanted to give it to Mirio. That's why you chose him as an intern in his first year. You wanted to train his quirk and body to be able to handle one for all, right?" Mirai was yet again surprised by Midoriya's smarts. He never told him who he wanted one for all to go to. He only said that Midoriya didn't deserve his quirk, and that it should have gone to someone else. And how did he know he chose Mirio to prepare him for that quirk? If only they realized someone was behind the door, only stopping mere seconds from what they heard. Mirai sighed. "Yes, when I saw his potential in his first year's Swords Festival, and how he looked too much like All Might, I sent him an offer. But I now realize that One for All might be perfect for your... Or rather, you might be perfect for One for All." Then Midoriya stunned him with his next words. "I was able to talk to the vestiges of One for All. They told me I would get their quirks next. I actually have 2 of them right now, one called Float and the other is Black Whip." He smiled brighter. Float was Nana's quirk, All Might's old mentor, and Black Whip was the 5th user's quirk. "He told me his name was Degoro Banjo. His quirk relies on anger, but Nana's relies on happiness. They told me that I complete One for All, as the 9th user." Murray chuckled again. "That shows that I was wrong about, huh?" "Just a tiny bit, sir." Midoriya smiled. "Well," he sighed, which made him age about 10 years. "I'm also sorry for saying you don't deserve your quirk." Midoriya brightened up at that. But Mirai held his hand up, and in an amused voice he said, "That doesn't mean you can't not improve more. You still need training." Midoriya nodded, then looked behind Mirai and stopped with a shocked expression. "Midoriya." Then another familiar voice rang in his head. "You chose me for the quirk you told me about last week." Mirio's hurt tone made him stand up and look at him guiltily. Mirai wasn't a hero with a 5-star record. He made mistakes as well as any other hero. In his whole career, he never would have known that moment would also break his cold demeanor. "I can't believe you." Mirio's voice cracked as he struggled to hold his sobs in. He vaguely saw Midoriya stand up as well. "I was about to reject the offer when you were about to bring it up again. I was pretty happy with my own quirk. Clearly you're not." He shook his head, and his next words killed Mirai even more. "I quit." And Mirio ran out of his office. Before Mirio could even call him, Midoriya made him sit, and assured him that he would talk to him. "It's all right, sir. I'll check up on him." And he ran after his 3rd-year intern. He put his head in his hands and sighed again. Maybe it was time to take up Eraserhead and Sukhancha's offer on the new wine they bought. It was his fault, goddammit. Everything has always been his fault. His mother was right. He was a useless son and worth so little in front of others. It was his fault his senpai was crying, and it was his fault that he quit. He never should have opened his mouth. Damn it. He continued to run after Mirio as fast as he could, if his damn torso didn't hurt, until he reached the locker room. His senpai was there angrily transferring his stuff from his locker to his gym bag. Izuku took a few breaths and calmed his heart. "Mirio senpai," he started, startling an angry Mirio. "I'm sorry about earlier. Sir wasn't meant to hurt you." Mirio threw his bag on the ground. "Then what was he doing?" he asked, still slightly breathless from the run. "He chose me just for that quirk he was obsessed with. It's like my own isn't enough. I'm not enough." He then laughed bitterly. "Train me to use One for All. That's all I was good for. Just for a quirk I was never going to accept. And if I told Sir that I wanted to decline the offer, wouldn't he have me fired? He saw me as a thing. He thinks without One for All I'm not strong enough. I am useless to him." "Mirio-senpai, if you would just listen." Izuku tried to get him to calm down, but he was interrupted again. "No, Midoriya. Just..." Mirio took a breath and let it out. "Do you have any idea what it's like to feel useless?" "No, because you're the one with One for All. If Sir wanted you to give..." Then suddenly, Everything Izuku was hearing sounded as if he was underwater. His senpai didn't notice him zoning out, and kept talking about how unfair everything seemed to be. Izuku was sucked in a memory that happened a few days ago. He was forced to visit his mother's house. It was never his house, not after the diagnosis day. He was sitting in his room, or rather a room with no bed, only a small makeshift of blankets on the ground with his hero notes under a secret locked-shut compartment, wondering when his mother would be coming home and hoping to God she doesn't. He didn't want to deal with her. Not today, not ever. Izuku must be the luckiest person on earth, because the next thing he heard, besides his uneven breaths, was the front door opening. To the house or hell, he didn't know. All he knew was blood was about to be spilled. That night was filled with nothing but painful screams and pleads for everything to stop. Luckily, his mother was a smart woman. She will always be a villain in his eyes. Their house was soundproof. He didn't get much sleep, and if he did, then nightmares were a bitch. Over the years, all he heard was useless and worthless, and some other comments about killing himself, but those were the main two. He always cursed his quirklessness and stayed up every night, terrified and hurting, wondering if anything would change if he had a quirk. Wondering why it happened to him. The answer was pretty clear after he met All Might. His mother still beat him. Kaken still bullies him, even in Yua, but the teachers only looked at it as rivalry. He laughed at his old self for thinking Yua was different than Aldera. Sure, Eraserhead taught there, and he was the first adult Izuku actually liked, even if he wanted to expel Izuku on the first day for having poor control over his quirk. Izuku thought he read his files. Everything was in there. He trusted him as a hero. Did he trust him as a teacher? Or a person? Not really. Izuku is not to blame here. His old teachers hated him. One even slapped him. So no, Izuku did not trust teachers. Or adults. He was always told adults knew best, and he should listen to his mother because she's always right. How can she be right when she ignored in the day? How can she be right when she beats him every night? He was lucky there were some days where she would spend the night at her friend's. So yes, Izuku was always made sure by everyone around him that he was nothing. And now, his favorite senpai saying that his former boss, thinks is useless. No, that didn't sit right with him. But really, he should have thought about what to say, instead of blurring out things he kept private for a reason. Izuku will also be asking Aizawa-sensei for awareness lessons, even if he didn't need them because he really should have seen two people were behind the door, listening in on the shouts happening in the locker room. I would rather be quirkless if Sir thought. Izuku didn't let Mirio continue. His sweet, kind and a person he was coming to love like a brother was saying he wished he was quirkless. The Greenette was mad. No, not mad, furious to the point where he wanted to punch Mirio, but settled for words. Maybe he'll punch him another time. Shut up. His shout was enough to have Mirio look at him with wide eyes and an open mouth, which he gets because Izuku never yelled or got angry in front of anyone. Anyone not a villain at least. Before he knew it, tears started pouring from his eyes as he continued. So what if that's the reason he chose you? Prove him wrong. Show him you're better than what he thinks you are. And at least you have supportive parents and a normal school life. Not having to worry about flowers on your desk, or be sent to the hospital. Or have anyone look at you like some sort of disease. Or have anyone look at you in disgust and tell you to kill yourself. At least your dad didn't abandon you at 4 years old. At least you don't have to stay up all night wishing your mother stopped beating the shit out of you for something you couldn't control. So don't you dare say you'd rather be quirkless because you have no idea what we go through. At the end of his rant, Izuku was panting. He wiped his eyes and didn't see the horrified face Mirio had. Until he realized what he said and covered his mouth in horror. He told him. He told on her. On them. On himself. He was going to be hurt with a knife again, isn't he? He was going to be sent to the hospital again and lie to the nurses that a villain attacked his home. They were going to refuse service because he was quirkless, aren't they? He was having a panic attack, but he didn't notice. Too busy muttering about punishments and knives and blood. He didn't notice one of the two horrified faces outside came in and tried to talk to him. Izuku was still in his head when he heard his name. Izu. Was someone calling him? Brimion-kan. He was then pulled to a warm chest. That wasn't his mother because she never called him by his name. Never hugged him. Her voice wasn't soft. She didn't feel safe. Slowly, but surely, he came to his surroundings. He was sobbing in someone's chest while listening to their heartbeat. He could make out two other people in the room. Were they crying, or were their faces that shiny from the lights? His sobs turned into sniffles. His hair was being awkwardly, but comfortably pat by a big hand. Izuku's vision cleared, and he recognized the two crying. He made sure he was seeing right were Mirio and Bubble Girl, which can only mean that the person hugging him that he was hugging. Izuku had his fists in a tight hold on that person's shirt was Nighteye. He should have cared that the man who apologized to him was hugging him and helped him out of his panic attack, and should have immediately recoiled from the hug. But Izuku didn't. He didn't care. For the first time in his life, he was being hugged by someone other than his best friends Tsu, Acha, Momo, Sho, Tenya and Hikken. But don't tell them that his favorites were always from Momo and Hikken. Or Dark Shadow, but they don't have to know that detail. Except Tokoyami. He felt safe, and too fucking starved to give a shit. He melted in that hug, and his tiredness made sure he didn't feel embarrassed. Nighteye's pulled from the hug, which made the greenette want to whine at the loss of comfort, but managed to hold it in. And before he could ask Izuku if he was alright after his panic attack, Bubbles ran to him and hugged him while saying "I'm sorry" over and over again. Izuku hugged her back. Yes, he was starting to love her hugs and murmured, but was still heard in the room because the four were the only ones in there. "It's not your fault. You didn't know." Nighteye sighed, rubbing his temples, and answered instead. "We still think we should be held responsible. As pros, we should have read the signs as abuse. I'm sorry, Izuku." Three things surprised Izuku. The blame that Nighteye was taking, him apologizing again, and his use of Izuku's first name. He can't say he's complaining. Better than that jackass last name. Nighteye continued, oblivious to Izuku's surprise. "I will not allow you to return to your house tonight. You will come with me and Bubble Girl." His confusion must have shown on his face, because Bubbles took the liberty to explain. "I had a hard time with apartments, so Sir helped me by letting me move in with him. There's an extra room. Please?" Izuku knew he would be going back to the dorms. He just didn't know that between everything that happened today, both Bubbles and Nighteye forgot about that fact. He didn't care. He didn't find it in HM2. Bubbles was still hugging him and petting his hair, so he was on the edge of falling asleep in her arms right there, and then neither of them would mind. But that's for another time. Izuku accepted. Mirio finished putting his stuff in his bag, and the four of them went down to an empty parking lot where Sir kept his car. Before getting in, Mirio started. He was clearly uncomfortable, but he continued anyway. "Sir, may I talk to you?" Nighteye nodded and told Bubbles and Izuku to get in the car. The two men left, tension high between them. Bubbles motioned for him to get in the car with her in the back. She still held him close, and sensed his tiredness, leaving them in comfortable, but still awkward silence. Izuku's thoughts began to run. This wasn't the first time he told an adult that his mother beat him, or that his school wasn't ideal. But it was the first time someone believed him. Izuku told some people over the years, but they all said he was too young to know what abuse was. That the bruises he showed were obviously fake, and that he should be grateful for his mother. Of course, the same thing happened when he went to the cops at 11 years old. He went in with a cop to write down information on himself and tell him. But as soon as he mentioned he was quirkless, he was dismissed with a "don't make up stories, kid." And his obvious bruises from that day increased immensely after that cop took him back to his house. Izuku was sure it was on purpose because of the smirk that cop gave him, and that light chuckle he made. The cop's face was engraved in Izuku's head. He would never forget that asshole. After a few minutes of silence, Mirio and Nighteye came back with less tension and more familiarity. Izuku knew his senpai won't be returning to work under his boss anytime soon. But the greenette believed that there will be a time when Mirio will be needed. Just not now. Nighteye was driving, while Mirio was in the passenger seat. They dropped off his senpai, and Izuku saw him wave, so he waved back, giving him a small smile. They continued the trip to Nighteye's house with Bubbles, not letting him go for 1 second. Once again, Izuku drank up the warmth and snuggled her happily. She cooed and continued to pet his head, while Nighteye was secretly watching too with a fond expression. Though not secret enough because Izuku caught his gaze, and the man turned abruptly to the road ahead. They slowly stopped at a tall-looking, obviously rich apartment building that Izuku knew was only reserved for pros, and most importantly, pro hero hawks he only knew because he hacked their database. No one caught him, mostly because they had weak security. Izuku laughed that day, and knew that even a baby would have known how to get past it. The three got out of the car after Nighteye parked it in the building's underground parking. Then his boss took out a card and scanned it on a screen before getting in the main lobby. Izuku, still in his now favorite human's arms, was dragged lightly as he was looking at everything in awe. Reaching the elevator, Izuku was surprised that pro hero Hawks went in after them. Hawks greeted them in a confident voice. "Hey, Nighteye and Bubble Girl, how are you?" He turned to Izuku, who turned red and hid his face in Bubble's shoulder. And who's that attached to you, Bubble Girl? The hero grins teasingly. Before Nighteye opened his mouth to answer, Bubbles, bless her heart, took the lead and blurted out smiling. He's my future adopted son. And Izuku was sure he was about to pass out. Looking like a strawberry now, maybe Bubbles will call him Little Strawberry instead of Little Broccoli. Hawks blinked twice, while Nighteye facepalmed and sighed. Takami, this is Izuku. He refrained from using his last name. Izuku was beginning to trust Sir more and more now. He's my intern. Hawks chuckled lightly as they began to get off the elevator after arriving at the highest floor in the building. That's good to know. Oh, I knew I recognized you from somewhere. The sports festival. Your finger destroyer kid. Izuku wasn't blamed for what happened next, because he was tired and totally exhausted after today. He deadpanned, and with a voice completely void of emotion he replied, Is there anyone that doesn't know me by breaking bones? That's what I should pick as my hero name. Imagine my debut. Pro Hero Finger Destroyer. Thanks, Hawks. Izuku didn't even blink while talking. Bubble Girl and Hawks started laughing, while Nighteye's lips twitched. After they stopped laughing, Hawks continued. I like your humor, kid. Turning to Nighteye, he asked. I'll see you in a few days for the mission plan. But before he could go, Nighteye stopped him. Actually, Takami, could you stop by tomorrow morning? I have some matters to discuss with you. Hawks nodded. Sure, I'll come by. Good night, Bubble Girl. Bye, Midoriya. Nighteye and Bubbles' face darkened, and Izuku was sure he flinched at the use of his last name, because Hawks stopped to look at the three of them in concern. Everything okay there? He tried to joke, only for it to come out flat. Nighteye pushed his glasses back that were slowly slipping on his nose. Just call him Izuku. That's actually something we should be discussing tomorrow morning. Hawks nodded and went in his apartment that was coincidentally across from Nighteye's. They went in, and Izuku knew if he ever invited Ochako over, she would smell the money right away and never leave. Izuku didn't pay attention to anything. He was led by Bubbles to an empty room, as he was swaying left and right trying to make his legs hold on. She made him lay on a bed and covered him with a cover as it was cold from the air conditioner. Nighteye clearly turned it on their way over here. He fell asleep, and immediately he was pulled in his quirk's empty space. Nana was waiting for him, smiling softly as she held her hands. He launched himself at her and smiled when he heard her laugh. You went through a lot today, didn't you, baby? His smile faded as he nodded. He loved it when Nana called him baby or sweetie. It was like a mother he wished he had instead of this monster sitting in the house. She took his hand, and the place slowly started to look like the sky. Izuku knew what was coming. That part Nana always did to calm him down was his favorite. A cloud appeared under them as they laid down, and Nana continued to finish the embarrassing story she was telling him about when All Might sneezed and accidentally put a hole in Gran Torino's house. Nana was the one who usually visited him, and occasionally Yoichi and Dagoro, but mostly the seventh user. She did warn him that he will be getting another quirk soon. The reason he was able to move now was because the smoke on his body that appeared right after his first dream, after the thing that happened at the sports festival, disappeared after reaching 20% earlier than he thought he would. He was standing proudly at 52%, but didn't tell anyone of his improvement because of his distrust over adults. Nana convinced him to tell Nighteye everything. He hesitated at that, but he promised her he would. Izuku never backs down on his promises. Signs of abuse were things sometimes missed by the naked eye, and most pro heroes are good at finding them. From what Murray noticed and heard today, was that Izuku was, and is still being abused. Murray had a lot to think about. He gathered that even the brightest smiles can hide so much pain. He looked back at what happened in the last 24 hours. Izuku was being abused by his mother. He was abused by his father before he left. His middle school was aware of this, but chose to ignore it and also participate in the abuse. He was suicide-baited almost all the time like it was normal. He also recalled his conversation with Mirio that led to a fair decision. He was clearly uncomfortable, but he continued anyway. Sir, may I talk to you? Murray nodded and told Bubble Girl and Izuku to get in the car. The two men left, tension high between them. They reached a place far enough not to be heard. Mirio cleared his throat and started talking. I know about everything. I heard you two talk about Izuku's quirk, but either way, sir, I would have declined it. I wanted to be a hero with my own power, and not someone's borrowed power. Besides, Izuku clearly is the better choice. Mirio smiles sadly. I quit because I was angry, but I still want to. Mirio. Please, sir. I need some time to think about all of this. Murai sighed. It's your choice. I just wanted to say. He put his hand on the younger one's shoulder and spoke in a proud voice. I am proud of you and what you're becoming. I'm sorry I let my selfishness take over when thinking of the quirk. I hope one day you'll come to forgive me. Thank you, came the teary-eyed response. Mirio laughed bitterly. Please update me on. I will. It was fair, yes. But that didn't mean he wasn't upset. Still, he had more important things to worry about. He woke up early the next day and did his usual routine. After getting dressed, he went out of his room to see Iwata drinking coffee on the kitchen bar. Good morning, Bubble Girl. Is Izuku awake? Good morning, Mirai, she smiled softly. Check for yourself. He pushed his glasses further on his face and went to open the door where the greenette slept all night. He saw the most adorable sight in front of him, not that he would ever admit it to anyone. The boy was sleeping on his left side, holding a soft and calm expression. He was facing the open window with the covers reaching his chin. The light from the sun was shining on him, making him look at peace. And God did Murray wanted him to be like that for the rest of his life. But unfortunately the kid had to be present for the godforsaken meeting. Murray sighed and went to sit on the edge of the bed. He ran his hand through the little kid's hair, which made him lean slightly in the touch. The older man never showed affection for anyone, but he would try his best for the boy who didn't feel love in his life. No one was around to witness this anyway, except Iwata, who was standing in front of the wide open door and filming the scene that would be in a family video years from now, so he kept doing that until Izuku woke up. He yawned and leaned more into the touch, until he realized who was petting his head. Izuku's face quickly became red, and as he went to apologize, Murai put his hand up. It's fine, Izuku. I was just waking you up for the meeting. Oh, he whispered. What meeting? The meeting to discuss everything that's happened in your life. The boy wore a confused expression until his eyes widened, and he began to open and close his mouth. He strangely reminded Murai of a fish. You know this is necessary, Izuku, he spoke in the most gentle tone he could muster. And good thing he did, since the boy calmed down slightly. I told a couple of pro heroes to come so they could help. Get dressed, and then we'll go, all right? Izuku nodded, as if he were in a trance, and got up to do what Murai told him to do. The older hero got out, closing the door behind him. It was a good thing Iwata put some shirts and pants in the room. Otherwise they would have to go get some things from the mall, and Murray wasn't planning to that until later. A few minutes passed, and after Izuku got out of the room, then ate the breakfast made by Bubble Girl and later saved by Izuku. He was an excellent cook. Much better than whatever black thing Iwata tried to cook. The three finished and headed out to the parking lot to get in the car. They arrived at the agency and immediately went to the conference room. That room held a long table with multiple chairs at its left and right side, and one at the head of the table. Murray sat at the head, while Iwata sat on his right side. Izuku took his left. Sitting in a comfortable silence, he could see Izuku from the corner of his eye do some type of breathing exercise to calm himself down. Iwata noticed and took the young hero in training's hands and murmured reassuring words. It made him instantly less tense than before. And Murray couldn't blame the kid for being tense. He was about to confess something he kept hidden for a long time. The Foresight user wanted so badly to ruffle his hair, but kept himself from doing so, because the help he called has arrived. For this to work and keep Izuku safe, he had to call a team of specialists. That meant he needed stealth, power, influence, persuasion, manipulation, and authority. The people that entered the room in one group were Eraserhead, Hawks, Present Mike, Midnight, Nedzu, and Detective Tsukachi. The first three sat next to Izuku, with his homeroom teacher next to him and the latter's husband next, leaving the overgrown chicken at the end. The last three took a seat next to Iwata. Nighteye, nodded Eraserhead tiredly. I only came because you said you needed my help. I thought about the other thing, he said, hinting at the shy Hasakai case. But then I saw you needed Present Mike and Midnight. What's going on, Nighteye? You said this was urgent. The underground hero glared. Murai could understand his confusion. Eraserhead was painfully aware that his student would be joining the dangerous case. And Izuku wasn't the only one. Since Fatgum and Ryuku are on it, their interns would join as well. To the frustration of Eraserhead, for not counting Izuku, other of his kids would be joining. But this wasn't about that. Murray cleared his throat and spoke. I called you six here because of some things I found out yesterday, and I would like to have it done our way, preferably by the end of this week. So you're using us? Joked a smirking Hawks. I didn't know you had it in you, Nighteye. Nedzu, who, from somewhere, got a small cup out and was drinking tea, commented in a curious voice. This does seem interesting since you called my personal phone number and not my office. Although, I have a feeling it has something to do with your intern, no? Present Mike raised an eyebrow. Midoriya. The use of Izuku's last name made Iwata growl accidentally out loud, and the kid flinched slightly. What's that got to do with? Mirai was usually blunt, and he wanted the kid out of the house as quickly as possible. Considering he's being heavily abused since he was a young child, I'd say you're the best at committing a crime the legal way. Silence was immediate. Nezu no longer held his cup, and the rest had horrified faces. Thankfully, Iwata's hands still held Izuku's, so the kid wasn't panicking. Elaborate, a cold, menacing voice said. Murray knew Eraserhead meant well, and that he was mad at himself for not noticing. Without another word, he opened his laptop and turning the security footage on. They all listened to the horror that scene became. It was still silent until Hawk spoke up. I've never wanted to commit arson more in my life. I'd help, came the reply from Midnight. Give me the name of the school, said an overenthusiastic Nezu. It has been a long time since I've gotten rid of one. And that was true. The first time Nezu destroyed a school was on his debut day. The Hero Commission quickly respected the animal. Why did you not tell anyone? Why did you not tell me? Was the silent question everyone heard but chose to ignore. Aizawa held a pained expression as he continued to look at the teary kid. I could have helped you, kid. Izuku wiped some tears. You wouldn't have believed me. What makes you think that, little listener? Asked a perturbed Yamada, tilting his head. I already told a police officer when I was young. But when I told him about my quirklessness, the kid shuddered at that word. He brushed me off for lying and sent me back to mother. In a surprisingly soft voice, Aizawa breathed out. Oh kid, of course we would have believed you. And the Erasure hero brought the sobbing kid in his chest. That action surprised everyone yet again. Who knew the cold hero was soft? Murai was feeling uncomfortable while looking at the two. He didn't know what that feeling was, so he ignored it and continued to speak. I already prepared what each of you is going to do. At that, the rest of the people looked away from the private scene and at him. Midnight and Present Mike, I'm sending you to arrest Midoriya and Co. Nezu and Hawks, I want you to retrieve all security footage from the middle school. What about the rest of us? Asked a confused, but equally enraged Naomasa. Eraserhead, Sakachi, Iwata, and I will be in charge of gathering evidence from the abuse. Pictures and records, replied Murray, making the kid look up from the hug that finally ended. Pictures? Yeah, kid, sighed the tired detective. We need picture to use in court. But at any point you feel uncomfortable, you can say, all right. Murray knew the debate that was going on in his head, and apparently, so did Aizawa. Poking at his head, Eraserhead spoke in yet another soft voice. You're thinking too hard about this problem, child. All right, blushed an embarrassed Izuku. He nodded shyly and wiped the rest of his tears. You won't judge my scars or everything, right? Everyone bristled at that, but they still nodded. Nezu looked up with a glint in his eyes, making almost everyone shudder. Oh, Izuku, would you mind giving me the name of your middle school? And so, the first thing they'd do is collect physical evidence. While two heroes went to arrest a certain mother, the other two went to retrieve security footage from a school that should be burned. Murai decided to divide everyone present. He sent Midnight and Present Mike to arrest Izuku's mother, since one of them can peacefully apprehend the situation by making her go to sleep. Nezu and Hawks were headed to Aldera Junior High to get as much video footage as they can. And Murai knows that Nezu will go beyond to get them, even if it wasn't as legal as it is supposed to be. Meanwhile, the detective, Eraser, Iwata, and him were going to go down to the station to question Izuku about the abuse, and get pictures as evidence from said abuse. Really, Murai didn't like any of that, but he had to suck it for the sake of the boy. Mimiri was going to slap a bitch. A student in their care was currently being abused, and they didn't pay attention. They had missed all the signs. But thinking about it, none of the teachers had missed them. The stuttering. The disbelief on his face from receiving praise like he was never complimented. The random bruises they thought were from training. The flinching at surprise touches. And loud noises. Come to think of it, the loudest noise in his class were Bakugo's screaming and his quirk usage, which reminded Mimiri to tell Shouta about warning his student to stop using his quirk that much, and all the staff at UA know about their rivalry, and the fact that they both come from the same middle school. She turned to Hizashi, who was driving the car, and voiced her concerns. Hizashi, you think we misunderstood Bakugo and Izuku's relationship? He hummed. What do you mean, them? Well, we know they came from the same middle school. and that they're childhood friends if the nicknames don't show it. But don't you think it's weird that the green bean always flinches when Bakugo's around? Even when he wasn't screaming and using his quirk. I think Green Bean was bullied by Bakugo, and we missed the signs or didn't look hard enough. She watched as his face darkened at the mention of bullying. It was a known fact for the four friends Shouta, Hisashi, Nimiri, Tensei that they hated bullying. They dealt with it when they were teenagers, and they saw it happen when they became teachers. They were a few kids that came to UA and got expelled, either from current bullying or bullying that happened in the past. That accusation alone doesn't help their case, as they were seeing so many new signs about their green-haired student. Numeri halted her thoughts, and the name All Might came to mind. He might know something considering how close he was with Izuku. She turned her phone on and texted him. Bitch night. Hey All Might, do you know about Izuku and Bakugo's history? Not a second later came the response. Mightaman. I know that they were childhood friends. Mightaman. Why? Bitch night. We think Bakugo bullied Izuku in middle school. And Nedzu's on it now. Mightaman. What? Mightaman. Why? Mightaman. What happened? And Nimiri didn't take into account that the case was supposed to be kept secret from anyone other than the people that attended the meeting. So she didn't see any harm in saying. Bitch night. Izuku's mom is abusive, and we found out that his middle school also took part in it. After a minute of silence, Hisashi sighed. If that's the case, then we'll leave the kid to Nedzu. He parked the car and Nimiri was just now noticing they were in front of a house. We're arresting this bitch. Bitch night. Okay GTG, arrest a bitch. Yeah, Hisashi was definitely mad. Though even she was surprised at what happened after. She turned her phone on silent and put it in her pocket. She can vaguely hear Shouta's voice saying you idiot, but she ignored it. They both got out the car and walked to the front door. Since Hisashi was closer, he knocked on the door, and a few seconds later, a small green-haired woman that looked too much like their student opened the door and smiled in confusion. Hello present Mike, Midnight, she greeted politely, which Nimiri was sure it was fake. How may I help two pro heroes? They watched as her face turned into concern and worry as she began to ask questions about her son's well-being. Hisashi narrowed his eyes and held up his hand to stop her rambling. Nimiri took this as a sign to talk. She held the cuffs in her hands, and at the sight, and her eyes widened. Probably never thought this day would come. Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to come with us. You're under arrest. Please remain silent until we reach the station. Inko's shocked face turned angry in a second, and then she started screaming profanities. Raging from, what the fuck has the brat told you? To, I should have never kept him. To say Nimiri was mad would be the understatement of the century. How could a parent talk about their child like that? She vaguely heard the bitch say something about the brat was quirkless. But that still wasn't a fucking excuse to abuse and torment a kid. As Nimiri was about to use her quirk on her, Hisashi, oh her sweet and usually rational Hisashi, held up a fist and punched that lady hard enough to knock her unconscious. She stared at him, jaw on the floor and cuffs still in her hand. And Hisashi turned to her, with an unreadable expression on his face. We'll just say you had to use your quirk. And yeah, they didn't mention how both the pro heroes laughed once they cuffed Inko and put her in the back of the car. Or at least, that story will be told to Shouta a few months later, when they recall the whole operation. He may or may not laugh so hard he scares his kids. But that's not for a long time. Keigo was also going to slap a bitch. Really, he never went to school, but from what Rumi told him about her time there, spider lilies and injuries fatal enough to be sent to the hospital were never part of the deal. His friend was really concerned when he texted her to confirm, but he promised to tell her everything when they finish. Keigo glanced from the corner of his eyes at the one-person animal. The Hero Commission is afraid to go against, and yeah, he could see why. The rat had this dark gleam in his eyes that promised eternal suffering to anyone who crosses his way. He almost felt bad about who they were seeing. The taxi parked close to the school to let them off. Keigo gave the driver a generous tip, and an autograph. He might have bribed them to not let it slip that he was at a middle school. No one knows what kind of rumors would start on social media. The rat and him walked to the school with dignity and grace that disappeared the moment the principal of the shitty school saw them. Keigo could feel his claws itching to scratch the human garbage, but he held himself and smirked. Principal Fujita started talking about his school and thanking Nedzu for sending the email about possible recruitment. The only problem is, the man started to talk and hasn't stopped talking. Keigo tuned the guy out and looked around the school, taking in the interesting scenery. He could make out kids in class, using their quirks like it was a normal day. Thankfully, by the time they arrived at his office, the guy stopped his rant and let them in. Both heroes sat on the chairs opposing Fujita. Seeing as neither heroes wanted to talk first, the man became nervous but grew confident in what he spoke. I want to thank you again for coming to see me. The most prestigious U.S. own principal came to my middle school, and number 2 pro hero Hawks. And oh god, how many times have they heard the same sentence now? Keigo didn't let that bother him. Instead, he smirked and nodded. I didn't know that May students of mine went to UA. The guy didn't even know what kind of school is this. Oh, you misunderstood the contents of that email, Mr. Fujita. Keigo silently cheered the rat on. What I wanted to discuss was 2 of your students that got accepted into the hero course. Fujita appeared to be confused until he brightened up and, oh, you must be talking about Katsuki Bakugo. He was our brightest student here at Aldera. Perfect quirk usage, amazing fighting skills, good grades. He was truly one of the best, and everyone here at Aldera knew he was going to make it in the hero course. He helped so many people and tutored so many kids too. I can't tell you how proud of him we all are. That was a tiny bit creepy. Sure, the kid was good and all, from what Keigo saw in the sports festival, but really? The guy was practically sucking up to a teenager. Sure, in his hero career, he understood mentor-student relationships, and even he had an intern a few months ago, so yeah, he gets it. But what that Fujita guy was doing was borderline creepy. Well, yes, started Nezu. Bakugo sure is one of a kind. But what can you tell me about Izuku Midoriya? The way Nezu worded that made him pause. Keigo half wanted to correct him and say, you forgot about Izuku Midoriya. But before he got that out, he thought about it. Huh, that was smart of the rat. They both watched as Fujita's smile turned into a frown. Ah yes, the quirkless boy. How he got into UA's hero course with a quirk, I have no idea. He sighed as the topic was exhausting him. Lucky for them, the principal fell into a pre-recorded trap. That boy has always been a liar and a cheat. He always starts fights with his classmates because how jealous he was of their quirks. Especially Bakugo. Midoriya followed him through everything. We tried separating the boy from Bakugo, but he just wouldn't budge. Not to mention his creepy muttering and his analysis notebook for the future he carried around with him. Picking everyone's quirk apart and dissecting like an experiment. We always punish him accordingly, no need to worry about that. But still, how that boy managed to slip through our grasp is beyond me. We talked to him and tried to convince him to choose a career other than heroics and a school other than UA, but he just wouldn't budge. Then suddenly we saw him at the sports festival with his flashy weird quirk that came out of nowhere. Trust me, Nezu. We tried everything in our power, not to make him your problem, but he shook his head in disappointment. It didn't work well enough. Nezu was stiff as a statue, and Keigo could feel his claws almost ripping through his gloves. His handler might give him shit for it, but right now he wanted to give that principal shit. There was so much to unpack here. Quirkless, liar, cheat, creepy. What the fuck? Well, thank you for that. Started Nezu coolly. It was obvious. The rat had a plan. As you know, from a concerned principal to another, we have to ensure our students' safety and take their well-being into account. Of course. Fujita nodded. Of course, he repeated. And you would, obviously, be concerned about your student if you heard some things about him from the past that should not go unpunished. Yes, I understand. Wow, he was good at this. If Nezu was playing against him in chess, Fujita would have lost the second he played his turn. In that case, would you mind giving us the recordings for the last 5 years, please? I'm sorry, the man stuttered. Keigo subtly told Nezu to let him speak with one look. He got a nod in response. I mean, he's just saying, man, we gotta watch out for that student. And for us to punish him, we got to have video evidence. Fujita was sweating nervously. I must apologize. We take the liberty to delete each year's video recordings to make space for. Keigo cut him off. That's the most bullshit reason I've heard. What my colleague Hawks meant was that we don't believe you. Please transfer everything to this USB stick. Nezu took a small device that most likely had a virus to hack the middle school in case of something. If you don't cooperate, I'll be glad to escort you down to the station. We have recorded proof of you bad-mouthing one of our prestigious US-owned students. So, Mr. Fujita, you either give them willingly, or I'll have to pry them from your soon-to-be dead hands. The best thing about this threat is that Keigo was sure as hell Nezu wasn't kidding. Why you can't do? Oh, you don't want to question whether or not he can do it? Interrupted Keigo in an amused voice. He leaned back on the chair with his crossed arms. What's it gonna be? Cooperation or disagreement? He smirked, leaning forward. Fujita pales further as he accepted the USB and downloaded everything they asked for in it. He handed them the tiny thing, and they left without a word. No thank you or fuck you. A shame, really. He wanted to punch that guy, but the white rat gave him one look, and he continued on walking. He hoped the others had more luck on their part. He just didn't know how much they got with the recordings and videos. Later, they'd be horrified about what they find. But right now they just kept on walking to the car they ordered to go down to the station. Getting in Nighteye's car with his sidekick, the detective and his problem child, Shouta let himself think over what he witnessed in the last hour. They all missed the signs. Or at least, not missed them, but rather made assumptions as to what they entailed. He needed to apologize to Izuku at the end because of their incompetence. He hoped that what his problem child went through wasn't as bad as they heard it was. Though it quickly showed that it was not the case. They got out the car to go to Tsukachi's office. They entered before, and from what Shouta could see, Naomasa was talking to someone and gesturing them to a room. He didn't pay any mind to that. The detective sat in front of the couch where Nighteye and Bubble Girl seemed to be protecting Izuku from both sides. He placed a record player and explained, I need to record this to be able to use it as defense. Is that okay with you, kid? His problem child nodded. Tsukachi started it and began his introduction. This is Detective Naomasa Tsukachi, working on an abuse case, both physical and emotional. Izuku Midoriya is the victim in question. Let the record be known that the date was XXXXXXXX2XXX. As Tsukachi started the interrogation, the others in the room grew horrified at each sentence that came out of his problem child's mouth. It was just as bad as they anticipated. They found out that his mother, she really couldn't be called his mother, at this point beat him when she's drunk, and treated him like he doesn't exist when sober. His father hasn't been seen since the kid was 4 due to his diagnosis, and who said being quirkless was a disease. What the fuck is wrong with people? Also, the kid wasn't quirkless, but one look from Nighteye told him to question later. They also figured out that his middle school was shitty as Bakugo was treating him. Though he stumbled through that when Tsukachi asked him if he was still bullied, only to have the Greenette lie and expose Bakugo. He didn't tell them how bad it was there, just that they suicide bait him often, destroyed his stuff, changed his marks, and accused him of cheating when he got slight above average grades. If that wasn't bad, then Shouta would only prepare himself when the kid calls something terrible. In the middle of the questioning, the kid started crying, which made Nighteye hug him. Shouta felt weird in his chest. What, was he jealous? Did he want to get a hug from Nighteye? He was happily married to Azashi, so that wasn't it. Before his thoughts spiral, Shouta made himself focus on the rest of this torture session. Fuck. No one deserves to go through what that kid has gone through. Least of all him. God damn it. The minute the detective turned of the recording, his face shifted into an odd expression. Guilt. This must be the other hard part. Okay, kid, that was great. But I'm afraid the hard part is what comes next. Looking at the teen leaning on Nighteye, he appeared to be exhausted. His eyes were puffy from crying, his left hand currently held by Bubble Girl. He looked up and nodded mutely. It seems that he didn't have the energy to talk, so he settled on raising an eyebrow, making Tsukachi explain his part. We need proof of the abuse from your school as testimony to use against them, and also from your Mo. He cleared his throat. I mean Inko. Once Izuku understood, he flinched but nodded anyway. Since I'm the officer that's taking care of your case, I'll be in the room with you if that's okay with you. The green-haired teen quickly nodded his head in affirmation. I have another officer there. She's the one taking the pictures. And if you want Aizawa or Nighteye to come with you in case you panic or something, that's okay too. Can Bubbles come? Came the surprising choice from the small teen. It looked as if Shouta and Nighteye were both expecting Toy Go. Or either of them. But the kid picked Bubble Girl. That was unexpected. Tsukachi, Bubble Girl, and Izuku went to another room to take care of the physical evidence. 45 minutes later, which were spent in awkward silence with Nighteye still on the couch, and Shouta leaning on the wall, Bubble Girl came in with her eyes as red as Izuku's were. The kid in her arms about to fall asleep right there and then, and Tsukachi looking more exhausted than he did before. Just what happened in there? Naomasa won't lie. He knew it was going to be bad. Abuse victims always had scars, no matter how little. He just didn't expect Toshinori's boy to be covered in them. Much less Toshinori calling his phone 5 times before Naomasa finally caved in and told him to come to the station in an hour. The poor kid had scars ranging from purple bruises on his thighs and arms, starburst and burned scars on his torso, back and shoulder, and what looked like lines which Naomasa figured it was from the knives when Inko was in the most drunken state the kid had ever seen her that night. The black-haired man felt relief when the kid told him he didn't self-harm, even if he thought about it from time to time. He could make out Bubble Girl holding him after they finished after some time. Poor kid had a panic attack with every scar he showed, which slowed the process. But it was expected given everything, really. His partner, who hated abuse cases as much as he did, wiped her eyes every once in a while to get rid of tears. He couldn't blame her. By the time they finished, Izuku looked as exhausted as he was. So he told them to come back with him to his office. It won't be long before the others join them with what they found. Murray noticed how exhausted Izuku seemed to be and sent him and Iwata to the apartment. Of course, convincing Iwata to go was hard, but she accepted once she knew she would be spending the rest of the day with Izuku. He glanced away as they took off and shared a glance with Aizawa as the latter looked up from his phone and nodded. Looks like the others are here. Toshinori also arrived, all confused and shaking from what Murray knew was anger. He stood next to Present Mike. From the darkened looks on the others' faces, Murray had a feeling he won't like what was about to occur in the next room. Tsukachi nodded in thanks to Present Mike and ordered everyone to stay behind the one-way seeing glass so he could interrogate Inko Midoriya. The detective went in and sat on the chair facing the scowling chained woman. He put the tape recorder on the table and turned it on. Let the record show that this is interrogation number 2 in the abuse case Izuku Midoriya. Inko Midoriya was called to be further investigated due to maltreatment of Izuku Midoriya. He lifted his head and looked at the green-haired woman in front of him and addressed her as Enria. I am inclined to tell you about my quirk to keep you from lying. My quirk is called Lie Detector, and it lets me know when you're lying and when you're telling the truth. With each word, Inko Midoriya gets more and more agitated. So I would advise you to not lie. Tsukachi asked normal standard questions at first. Her name, age, quirk, her relation to Izuku, which made Aizawa and Murray mad at her response, that brat is my son. And other words he wouldn't like to repeat on behalf of Izuku. Then they moved on to questions everyone in the room has been tense over. The only thing that's keeping Inko Midoriya alive right now is the glass between her and the heroes. Did you abuse Izuku in a matter of screaming and belittling him? Inko seemed to remember the detective's quirk, and not long after that, she admitted yes. Did you ever withhold nutriments from when he was a child until now? No. From what Murray could see on Tsukachi's face, that her answer was either a lie or, that's not entirely true. A half-lie. Inko scowled. I only did that when he was little. He learned to cook on his own. He was fine. Tsukachi glared slightly and continued. Have you ever laid a hand over Izuku? She scoffed. Only when I'm drunk. There was that one time when he was 11. He was brought home from school by a cop. She huffed and muttered, taught that brat a lesson that day. Murray, too, was going to slap a bitch. He could feel Aizawa's anger, Toshinori's rage, Nedzu and Hawk's rising hatred towards this woman. From what he saw earlier, Present Mike and Midnight both hated her long before this interrogation. The detective cleared his throat in warning, and to let her know that what she said was caught on the tape. The woman rolled her eyes and seemed to accept her fate. Are you aware of Izuku's bullying at school? I am. Are you aware that half his scars came from the bullying? Yes. And the other half of his scars come from you? Yes. Tsukachi looked exhausted as he took some pictures from a file he had on. No doubt that those were the pictures of the kid's scars. The detective showed them to her, and her eyes still remained hard. He then went on to explain that the day of the court, Izuku wouldn't have to participate. She glared at the man. And why not? Tsukachi's lip lifted for a second, as though seeming satisfied. We got verbal and physical proof from the scars. And we have video recordings from the school to have it shut. We'll take care of arresting both you and the staff of Aldra with what we have. He took the recording in his hand and turned it off. Inko Midoriya was escorted out by Sansa to a holding cell until they figure out the date of the hearing. Toshinori shook his head. I can't believe I didn't notice. I can't believe none of us noticed. Midnight sighed. We couldn't have known, Toshinori. But we all saw the signs, didn't we? Present Mike shimmed in. We knew something was wrong, and we still didn't check in with the baby. Morie had some thoughts on that. First of all, yes, they should have checked in with Izuku and made sure of what was happening sooner. If they noticed then as heroes, it was their job to make people feel safe. The fact that they, Morie included, Ignored most of it, then they failed. But better late than never, he supposed. Second of all, baby? Izuku wasn't anyone's baby, and he certainly wasn't Present Mike's. He could see Eraserhead's soft expression right after that sentence from the corner of eyes. He was also aware of Hawk's determined look, and Nedzu's scarily eerie smile. Guess Murray is going to be fighting for more than a child's rights tonight. Detective Tsukachi got in the room and informed them to come to his office. Inko Midoriya is away for now. I will be checking the footage with Nighteye since he's the main person in this investigation, and Nedzu and Hawks since they've brought the videos. Anyone else is welcome too. The whole team got out and went ahead to Tsukachi's office. The man stood in front of his computer loading the contents of the USB with Nedzu. He sighed and nodded at everyone, advising them to sit on the couch as he placed the computer on the coffee table. The moment he hit play was the moment Murray and pretty sure everyone wanted to commit arson and kill a bunch of teachers. Hisashi actually slapped the bitch. Even if she deserved more, he held himself back and let the legal team handle her. Hisashi couldn't believe that the baby went through this kind of thing. Shouter rolled his eyes when he called Izuku baby. But he won't stop because the green bean is still a baby. He wasn't the only one who had tears in his eyes because of the footage. Mimiri had a hand on her mouth to muffle some sobs. Toshinori had this rage in his eyes that made him look terrifying. Hawks clearly wanted to take one of his feathers and slice some people. Even though that might not be legal, he knows that most of the heroes in this room wouldn't mind. Their student was getting pushed, punched, kicked, thrown, burned, hit in so many different and cruel ways. They watched as the kid got older, the beatings got rougher, and the flowers made tears come down faster than Hisashi can shout. He was pretty sure Shouta had tears in his eyes too, but from his blurry vision, Hisashi couldn't tell. They watched multiple videos of teachers claiming Izuku was cheating on exams and changing his scores to lower ones. They had his exam records, and according to Nedzu, the only person rat that had access to the students' files unless Shouta asked for them, were at the very least average, and some were failing. The worst thing about the videos was the fact that the same student who was Izuku's main tormentor was still in US Hero course. Pushing aside the bullying and the words that the green bean received, plus the ignorance and negligence. Then there were other clips of the green-haired kid being pushed down some stairs, others kicking him, some teachers blaming him for the mess he obviously didn't make on his desk, giving unfair hours of detention that Hisashi was sure Inko punished him for. After the final clip stopped, the heavy tension in the room was clear, but no one made a sound. Until Nimiri opened her mouth. I feel so bad. She took a deep breath. God. He doesn't deserve anything that happened. I will take care of Bakugo. Shouta promised in a dark tone. Count me in. Hisashi said, while giving Shouta a feral grin. It wasn't a known fact, but what people don't know is that Hisashi is way more sadistic than his husband. Probably more insane too. Nedzu looked up. I will also take part in that decision. And make sure test Izuku for his official scores. Hey wait. If you guys are doing something then I want to take part in this. He raised his hand and said, I want to meet the kid again and train him. You can't do that, Hawks, Toshinori replied. I'm training my kid. To which Nighteye quickly shut down both of them. He's not your kid, and leave the training for after therapy. He rubbed his temple. Nedzu, Present Mike and Eraserhead will take care of Bakugo. But I want Nedzu on the case as a primary witness for his grades after Izuku is tested. What about me? Chimed in Toshinori. I want to take part in the case. Shouta sighed. Bringing all might in this won't help. As they began to argue about who's going to do what, Nighteye's ringtone made them silent as he answered. Whoever was on the other end had to have some good news about something since the Foresight user calmed down. When he hung up, he looked at the eager eyes of every hero and detective who wanted to know what that was about. That was Centipter. He had gotten news about the Shy Hasakai case. There's been some updates that we will talk about tomorrow. Good. That only leaves Izuku's situation. Nedzu said, strangely amused about something. What situation? Asked Nimiri. Living situation, of course. Who is he going to live with? Me. Came the response from both Hisashi's husband and Nighteye. Both men turned to look at the other with surprised faces. Wait, shouldn't we vote on something like this? Questioned Hawks. 'Cause I want to. You're a kid. Deadpan Shouta. So? I'm more than capable. You're also tied to the Hero Commission. Glared Nighteye. God damn it. It's obvious. Scoffed Toshinori. I should take him. We have similar quirks. We know each other very well. I trained him for a year before you. And he continued ignoring the what? That came from Shouta. And he already sees me as a father figure. More like a bother figure. Came from Nighteye, and you're a bad teacher. I wouldn't be surprised that you'd be a bad parent. Came from Shouta. All Might coughed, surprised, in a tissue that turned red. Detective Tsukachi had to cough to cover his laugh, but Hisashi knew better. The former cleared his throat. We know Nedzu, Midnight, Hawks, All Might, and I are out of the question. So it's between Sasaki and Aizawa. Shouta glared at Nighteye, and the banter began. I'm his homeroom teacher. And you've proved that you're more than capable in checking in with your student. Besides, I'm his mentor, and he's my intern. I noticed how tired and done he was when he came from the days he worked for you. I also heard from Tagada that you're giving him harder work. And I have a husband and cats. I can see the future. I'll know when he's in trouble. See the future, my ass. Most of those visions are incorrect, and you know it. You have more than one student to take care of. Plus, he trusts me. He trusts me too. As much as Hisashi was a fan of this, and from the looks they were getting, the others found this disturbing and funny, he had to put a stop to this. You guys do know that partial custody is a thing, right? They both turned to him very slowly, and some light seemed to sparkle in their eyes. Huh. Hisashi was a little shit. But he was a smart little shit. His hatred for humans grew over the years. Nothing has changed in society as he hoped. No matter how good of a person you were, they'd still find something to make you want to end everything. And Izuku Midoriya is one of those good people. He would have taken the liberty to offer fostering the small kid. But he knew the others had much strong connections to him. Though Nedzu wasn't sad in the slightest. He had plans, big plans, for both of them. He wanted to test the kid on his current knowledge. And from what he heard around the school, Izuku was good at analyzing. Nedzu liked that part. Maybe he'll make him his personal student when all goes well. Shouta and Hisashi were currently home. They took a shower, fed the cats, and ate some food themselves. After that, they sat on the couch with Shouta leaning on his husband. They both had some things to think about. Shouta couldn't help but feel anger. Anger at himself, at that shitty school, and over the fact that Bakugo wanted to be a hero. Not only did call him bad names with the others, he also beat him up and left scars. Shouta is thankful and spiteful that he didn't see the scars on his kid. What a mess. He sighed as his husband messed with his hair. We'll get him the love he deserves, and we'll take care of him, Shu. Yeah, he murmured. I know we will. Shortly before the others came, Izuku was, reluctantly, sent home to spend the day with Bubbles. They both got into a taxi and Izuku went over the last few days. It was normal until he bumped into his old middle school bullies in a restaurant. His outburst at Mirio, his cruel turned nice suddenly mentor, and now the investigation with his sensei and other heroes. It was surreal because no one cared about him until he met his best friends when he entered UA. His mod and co's house was never a home to him, but Nighteye and Bubbles' apartment was. He briefly wondered when he called that apartment his home, because all his life, he never have anything to be home other than the recent dorms at UA with his friends. He missed Momo and Dark Shadow's cuddles, which often had Fumi join them in embarrassment. He also missed Ochako's screaming matches with Shochin over theories he made. Some were ridiculous, some with interestingly read, terrifyingly accurate. He wanted to hear Tenya's attempt at using memes, or listen to Tsu's croaks in between her sentences when she was too excited about a topic, or Hitchin mimicking his other classmates' voices with his mask, or when Mei laid on him to sleep after a tiring day in classes. Right, his friends were his home, and now Bubbles was too. And deep down, he'll realize that Nighteye was also part of his home, but not right now. And maybe in the future, other people will be considered home. Right now, he let himself cry in Bubbles' arms. She held him on the couch and cried with him. That was definitely different from being screamed at by Inko whenever he cried. Hey Izuku, Bubbles started in a guilty tone. I have a question. You don't have to answer, she reassured. But it would be really helpful. He nodded. Sure, I'll try my best to answer it. When we had that meeting, you mentioned an officer. Right? He knew what she meant. And from the way she apologized right after he knew she was aware. I'm sorry, Zuku. Just, she sighed. Please, hun, can you give me his name? I'd like to know the name of the man I will murder. He laughed lightly as she wiped some tears that escaped. Asahi Hiroto. Bubbles smiled proudly and hugged him. Thank you for being brave, hun. And that brought Izuku to tears, which made Bubbles cry with him. After their crying session, Bubbles asked if he wanted to eat. And he nodded. We'll order takeout, right? Yeah, she pouted as she seemed to remember how awful her cooking was. He laughed lightly as Bubbles ordered from the same restaurant they went to a few days ago. After their food came in, they put on a movie and ate on the couch. Bubbles warned him that Nighteye must never know since he hates not eating on the kitchen bar, so he promised not to tell her. Speaking of promises, he still has not yet told Nighteye about his higher control of One for All, and it might be a good idea to, since the ghosts won't stop pestering him. Lucky for him, Nighteye came in the door a second after that thought, which didn't help Bubbles' case in hiding the fact that they were eating in a place Nighteye told her not to. Izuku smiled as the man gave her a disappointed look. It was a bit funny to see that look of shame on her. Just a bit. Although the hero's face was smug and wasn't that weird when he came in, he still held some sadness to his look. "Sir, are you okay?" He sighed. Everything went well. Then he muttered something about adoption, which rendered Izuku confused. "We have another meeting tomorrow about the case." Whatever he was talking about, Bubbles seemed to get. Izuku was thinking for a second. Nighteye was nice these days. He had a sudden change of heart and was weirdly protective of Izuku when he found out about the abuse he went through and started to act like a doting parent. Izuku never had that either. And with that in mind, he looked up shyly and asked in a small voice, "Are you tired? You can join us and watch the movie if you want." Izuku quickly looked at his lap to ignore whatever reaction the other green-haired man had. By doing that, he didn't see Bubbles glare telling the man with her eyes that he better get over here. Izuku didn't know that Murai was surprised at the request, because he thought the kid didn't trust adults. He felt a strange emotion that he was usually uncomfortable with. God, that kid. Nighteye hummed and came over to sit next to Izuku. So now he was sandwiched between Bubbles on his right and Nighteye on his left. Good thing they ordered extra because Nighteye received 2 mischievous smiles. He rolled his eyes, and he smiled as he shook his head. "Just this time, you two." They both giggled and continued to watch the movie. After the movie ended, they all went to their rooms and have Nighteye force him to go, because apparently he had patrol tomorrow to sleep. Even if Izuku wanted to stay up a bit to give the present more thoughts, he could feel One for All's vestiges calling him and telling him to sleep. Looks like he was seeing them again tonight. He opened his eyes when he felt them, and for the first time since they came to him in his mind, all of them were there. Blurry All Might was there too. Izuku must have looked ridiculous because Nana laughed and spread her arms waiting for their usual hugs. He smiled so brightly he could have sworn Banjo and a spiky blonde-haired man squinted at him and ran over and hugged her tightly. She smiled warmly at him. "Things are looking up, aren't they, sweetie?" Izuku could only nod as he felt his throat close up. He looked around again and saw some of them smile. He could also see the second and third user smile slightly. Before, he was told how they didn't want to show themselves to him, but warmed up after a conversation they had with Nana. He distinctively heard something about skinning and reviving, but he was too engrossed with Yoichi that day. Who knew tales about All for One would be so funny? The first user cleared his throat. "As much as I love this, we have some new things to talk about." Izuku looked confused until Yoichi said, "Since you handled Float and learned to control it, and the training with Banjo to control Black Whip is going well, we think it's time for you to receive 2 new quirks." Izuku only looked at the vestiges with a look that said, "I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed," making some of them look away from him. He let go of the warm hug and shrugged. "I mean, I don't care, I could handle it now, I know that." He sighed. "But why now?" He shook his head. "I mean, you said that my control over Float is good, and Black Whip needs more time with Banjo, but I know I'm close so he trailed, not knowing how to continue. Lucky for him, Yoichi knew what to say. "Well, now that you're at 52% power," the first stated. "We know you could handle more than 1 quirk, but we still need to be careful. I thought my body would be able to handle more than quirk, because you said One for All needed only 20% to start the quirk passing, and since I'm originally quirkless the transfer is different," Izuku questioned. He knows why they waited after he finally reached 20%, but has no clue onto why they're not completing the process. Don't get him wrong, Izuku didn't have a problem whether or not he gets the quirks. But the vestiges said with him possibly the last person to get One for All, it was necessary, and it gives him more power. As much as the vestiges hated it, he will have to fight All for One and Shigaraki one day, so the added boosts will definitely help. "I know that, kid," Yoichi nodded. "Still, better be safe than sorry. We don't your bones breaking again." Izuku huffed at Yoichi's hidden amusement. "Plus, And Nana's ex-mentor and 6th user of One for All chimed in. With your level of academic you're in, your analysis, and how strong and chaotic you are without your quirk, we know you can handle all of them, but we're looking out for you. That's all. Izuku's face heated up, and Nana pinched his cheeks. It's true, hon. Don't take yourself for granted. Even Nighteye noticed. And speaking of Nighteye, she put her hands on her hips. When are you telling him? Tomorrow after I finish patrolling. Mirio and I were supposed to patrol together, but he shrugged. Nana nodded and motioned first to continue. The man cleared his throat. The quirks you're getting next are N's and Atsuo's. Izuku blinked once. Then twice. Nana thought that was adorable, but he doesn't have to know that. I know who N is, but who's Atsuo? A voice in the back chuckled, and when Izuku noticed, it was the 3rd user of One for All. So his name is Atsuo. Huh. He secretly wondered why he never knew the person's name. Though as some form of guilt appeared on his face, Atsuo realized and waved his hand. It's fine, kid. Have any idea what my quirk is? No, not really. Sorry, sir. Don't call me sir. Makes me feel old. Izuku nodded at Atsuo and wanted to correct him and say that, yes, he is old, but held onto whatever his response was and listened to what the man was saying. My quirk is called Fajin. It allows you to build up and store kinetic energy as you move, and this energy can then be released as an explosive burst of speed and power. He explained. So kind of like an energy stockholder, and I use this energy to enhance my muscles. Kinda like how One for All works, but maybe without the sparks that normally appear when I use my quirk. I can run fast, but I can't kick as strong as I could with One for All. What about my arms? I can make them stronger, but they won't work as fast unless I use One for All. Nana sighed. Oh, Izuku, she said in fondness. The kid just talks and never stops. Stuttered Yoichi. Banjo chuckled. Forgot he does that. And blinked as Atsuo rubbed his temples. He's scary smart. Gotta give him that. And Izuku just kept going on, sprouting more theories that none of the users even thought of before. Makes me wonder if it works on my mind to make it stronger and faster. I could able to be more smart than I am now. What if I use it with other quirks? Can it enhance them? I know One for All already made them at maximum capability, but what if I can make them even stronger, and they'll surpass their original power? Wow, that brings the quirk theory into new light for me. Oh my god, he's still talking, muttered Banjo. He scratched his chin in interest. You know, I never thought of it like that. The 2nd user smirked, making Yoichi scared for some reason. Oh no, what's that smirk for Hiroji? The spiky blonde laughed. Nothing. Just, poor hero society. They're never going to prepare themselves. The vestiges either shook their heads or laughed with second. Though some Banjo opted for both. Even if Nona loved the kid, she really had to stop him before he wakes himself up on accident. Even if it did happen before when Izuku was muttering about her own quirk. And there was the matter of the 2nd quirk he was receiving. Izuku, she cut him off. The green-haired kid realized that he was muttering to himself about the quirk, and turned an alarming shade of red. Banjo was worried, but he'd never admit it, and focused on Yoichi again. He smiled. The 2nd quirk you'll obtain is N's smokescreen. Izuku's smile lit up in excitement as he started to vibrate in place. He loved N's quirk. He saw it in his dreams once, even if he watched his death, and was more traumatized than before, and already made pages about it in his notebook. Plus, it helps that N has talked to him about it before. When you'll wake up, started Nana, you'll already be in possession of both those quirks. But it's better to wait until after you tell Nighteye about everything so you can focus on training. Izuku nodded and felt a pull. He was waking up and the vestiges realized this. They said their see you laters, and Nana told him that they'll bring 8th next time to talk. He was excited. He'd never done that before, and it'll be kind of neat to watch the All Might freak out for a bit. Though the expression on some of their faces promised death. Well, he'll think about it later. He had to wake up. After waking up, he felt One for All's power vibrations through his whole body, twice as it had been when he got Black Whip alone. Float wasn't as noticeable since he was working with it for a while before Nana told him he has it. It came quite a shock to him, though it makes the pause at the entrance exam before falling to his death make sense. He knew Fajin and Smokescreen were in his grasp, but he didn't do anything since he wanted to keep the promise he made to Nana. He shook himself and got ready, also got a hug from Bubbles and a hair ruffle from Nighteye, climbed in the car. On the way, Nighteye explained that he was still going on patrol, and unfortunately due to Mirio quitting, He had to accompany someone else. Izuku said please, and showed him his kitten eyes, which were his secret weapon, but Nighteye never budged. He told him that his partner was already waiting in his mentor's office, so he'll find out later. He never saw the fond and exasperated look Nighteye sent him, but it was for the best, the man thought. Arriving at the agency, he eagerly held Nighteye and Bubbles' hand without realizing, and dragged them to his mentor's office. Though Bubbles had to get some preparations going for some meeting the pro heroes were having, he ended up dragging a secretly amused Nighteye alone. Izuku would have been embarrassed, but if he's living with the man that he's starting to see as a father figure. Not that he'd ever tell him. He opened the door, and upon seeing huge red wings, Izuku felt more excitement. He got 2 quirks, and now he's patrolling with Hawks. This is amazing. From his tiny hop and excited smile, he could see Hawks smirking at him. Or was it behind him? Whatever, he was patrolling with the number 2 hero Hawks. Of course Izuku was excited. He never noticed the dark look on Nighteye's face when Hawks smirked at him. Or the way his mentor tensed in an emotion he figured out last night due to thinking about a potential custody battle. The Foresight hero sent Izuku to put on his latest hero costume that had been upgraded from May. He had black combat shoes instead of his red ones, and his suit was fireproof. She also added a voice changer and an oxygen tube in his mask in case of an emergency. He got out of the changing room and went down to the entrance doors, where Hawks met him with a different smile that felt softer than his usual. He dismissed it and went on his way to the patrol route he was assigned to. So, Baby Bird, Hawks started with a nickname which made Izuku blush. Call me Hawks on duty, but Keigo when we're not okay, Izuku nodded. Nighteye said you had some questions you wanted to ask me. And just like, he lit up and fired his questions at the number 2 hero. Izuku knew Hawks had a bad life, just like Izuku. What with both of them being abused by everyone, some not even intentionally, and never received comfort. The problem with Izuku and Hawks was that Izuku's abusers were taken accountable now. The green-haired hero in training vowed to himself that he'd do whatever it takes to help the hero and let him be free. As they walked and talked, they still kept close attention to their surroundings. Luckily for Izuku, May has also just installed an earpiece that would record everything to his hero phone, so he could always review everything later. Suddenly, Izuku's latest question came to a stop when something came crashing into his left leg. He looked down and noticed it was a little girl. He bent down and held her in his arms and realized it was a scared little girl, and an abused one with all the bandages and ripped dress shirt. The white-haired child gripped onto his costume and whispered in a tiny voice, "Help me." And he just knew he had to do anything to save that girl. Without saying anything, he got up with her in his arms. He felt a pull somewhere within his quirk, but didn't know what it was. All he knew is that the girl felt relief for the first time. What Izuku didn't know was that the second user had something to do with this. But he'll come to find out later in the day. Before even turning his head to inform Hawks, a man stepped out of the shadows of the alleyway the girl came out of. A hero and a hero in training. You never see that in those streets. Izuku hated how he immediately knew that man was dangerous. Not only was he a Yakuza, but he was the abuser of this girl. The man continued in his monotone voice, "I apologize for my daughter. We had a little fight, and she threw a tantrum, thinking that running away from home will remedy what she did. Now, little hero, give my daughter back to me, and we'll be on our way." Maybe with Mirio still at his side, his senpai would have smiled and gave in, then reported it to Nighteye. Maybe if Izuku didn't know any better, he'd be the one that gave in and let the girl back into a cage. But this wasn't the maybe he thought of. No, this was reality. If he didn't do what he did, they'd have more information on a certain group. If he didn't do what he did, he'd be pulling at his hair for letting her go. If he didn't do what he did, he'd beat himself over it. And you know what? Damn the consequences. He pointed the hand that wasn't holding the terrified girl to the man, reached out to Fifth and pushed. He didn't think twice about it. That bastard in front of them made that little girl suffer. He deserves whatever Izuku did. And normally Izuku had a plan. But right now all he could feel was anger towards that guy, so he summoned Black Whip, wrapped the villain in it, and smashed his head against the wall in the alley. He has to admit, that wasn't his best moment. And his partner agreed from the look on Hawk's face. Lucky for them, no one was present around them, and the girl had her face hidden in his neck, clutching his costume tightly. Izuku still held the knocked-out man in Black Whip. If he made a move to wake up in any way, Izuku's just going to have to repeat what he did and knock him out again. He turned to Hawks and said, "Call Nighteye and the police. I think they'll want him. All Hawks could do was scoff and admit, yeah, I'll say. Then the hero turned around to call his mentor. Izuku didn't even think about the consequences of his actions. He didn't care, really. While they waited, a tiny voice cut Izuku's thoughts. Why, you saved me. He looked down and saw bright red eyes looking at him in awe and wonder. It made him want to hide, but he chose to reply to her in a soft voice and a small smile. Yeah, I'd do it again if I have to. She blinked, and he had the urge to coo. Is that what Bubbles felt like with him? What? He gave her an encouraging look. What's your name? Almost came out a whisper. I'm Izuku, but you can just call me Izu if you want. And my hero name is Deku. What about you? What's your name? I'm Eri. It's nice to meet you, Eri. Yeah. What's a hero? It's someone that saves people like us. She gasped slightly. Why you're like me? She asked, mouth wide open like she couldn't believe she can relate to someone. Which was bad enough as it is, but it's still nice to have someone with similar experiences. He chuckled lightly. Yeah. Izuku noticed the 2 police cars parking next to them, and Nighteye's car that had both Nighteye and Aizawa come out. Both looked distraught since he could guess what Hawks said to them. Hey, we have an unconscious villain with us, and a little girl, please come. What a great conversation. 2 police members came and cuffed the still knocked out man and transferred him to the back of the car. All while he was still out cold. Oh, his head was bleeding. Well, they can take care of his concussion later in jail. Izuku hopes it hurts. A confused Nighteye approached him, with an equally confused Aizawa at his tail. The latter took one look at Eri in his arms, and the look on his face said, what the fuck happened now, problem child? To which Izuku released a breath before trying to answer. Nighteye cut him off before starting. Why don't we head to my office and talk there? We'd have more privacy. Lucky for the 3 of them. The walk there didn't take too long since Hawks and the Greenette only just started their patrol. The adults walked in front, while Izuku stayed in the back to calm the still terrified little girl. She refused to let go of him, which Izuku didn't have a problem with in the slightest. Going through the entrance door, they saw a shocked Bubbles with a file in her hands, blinking at Eri and Izuku's state. Nighteye held his hand and sent her somewhere with some kind of message. The 3 of them arrived at the top of the building and went in his mentor's office. The man rubbed his temples, gesturing at Izuku to sit on the couch while he sat on the armchair next to it. Izuku, he knew what troubled Eri right now. She was in a room with 2 people she trusts the least, adults. And Izuku, he could relate. He sat with her, on the farthest side of the couch, with her still hugging him and hiding in his neck. This time away from the prying eyes of his homeroom teacher and mentor. Aizawa sat closest to Nighteye, on the same couch Izuku sat on, but farther from the kids. He momentarily forgot his teacher was taking care of his case, slightly shocked at the distance. Her heart was beating faster than normal. Not knowing what to do in this exact situation, Izuku put his cheek on her head and waited patiently for her to calm down. His method must have worked because her heart rate was returning to normal, even if she was still in hiding. He didn't mind, and neither did she, so why should he stop her? All while Aizawa and Nighteye sat waiting with patience. They never stopped him or hurried her to calm down. Izuku was thankful for that. He didn't need to know the men knew why that was familiar. What was happening with the white-haired kid happened to Izuku. And they hated that, but still didn't pry until the green-haired kid did something first. Eri didn't look like she was moving anytime soon from the warmth, so Izuku raised his head and started speaking. He told the 2 heroes when and where he found her, how he knocked the man out. Aizawa snorted and Nighteye facepalmed at that, and that he was keeping her, to which he felt a strange gust of affection out of nowhere. Whatever, he'll think about that later. His mentor absorbed this information. He looked conflicted for a second, but he seemed to come to a conclusion. Izuku, come with us to the meeting room. There's something you should know. Getting up with Eri in his arms, they walked to a meeting room, all while Nighteye explained to him what he did. That man you just, he sighed but continued, knocked out, was part of an organization called the Yakuza. I'm sure know about it since you've completed a few assignments concerning it. His name is Overhaul, and he's, or rather was, the leader of the Yakuza. The girl with you must be connected to him since you found her in that state. A few minutes ago, I called in the heroes who are taking part of the investigation, and their interns as well. Naturally, you're part of it as well. I got some news last night about the investigation. That's why I called the meeting. They're all waiting on us, so let's get in. The doors to the meeting room opened, and from the looks on everyone's faces, Izuku knew they looked ridiculous. Two heroes dead looking with a kid holding a child in his arms. Yeah, beautiful mental picture. Nighteye took a stand at the end of the table with Bubbles by his side. Aizawa sat on a chair with one empty next to him for Izuku to sit. Eri hugged him tighter, and he never showed any sign of resisting. He looked up and around the room and noticed some of his classmates. It seemed that Fatgum Agency was here by the looks of Amajiki-senpai, Kirishima, and Momo. Rukyu Agency was also here since Hadu-senpai was in between Acha-chan and Sue. His mentor began speaking about the news the other night. Apparently, Centipter was informed by one of the nighttime heroes present that the latter stumbled on a conversation between two members of the Yakuza talking about some kind of bullets. He said that he overheard them talk about blood and a poor kid getting experimented on, which prompted Nighteye to present discoveries on what they think they could be. All while Eri tensing more and more. But then Izuku put his cheek on her head again and thought of happy things which startlingly calmed her down. All this talk about blood and experiments made Izuku as uneasy as Eri was. Nighteye went on to explain how Eri was involved after Rock Lock. A hero sitting coincidentally across from Izuku asked him about the students joining them. Not one person in the room, sans Aizawa, Nighteye and Hawks, who came back a few minutes after Izuku, was not baffled. No one said a word until Rock Lock looked at Izuku with a menacing look on his face. So you jeopardized a whole operation for the sake of a kid? Rock Lock, Aizawa said with a warning tone in his voice. What? Was all Izuku could muster out at the moment due to the shock at that kind of question. This is the reason I didn't want kids in this mission. You're too naive and inexperienced to take care of cases like we do. The man shook his head and angrily started reining his voice. That girl could his daughter. He could be out looking for her right now. What the hell were you thinking, kid? I wasn't thinking. She needed help, so I helped her. Came the meek reply from Izuku. So? Do you listen to every kid that says help me? You just kidnapped our only way to win this mission and get rid of the Yakuza. By that time, Rock Lock was standing up and shouting at Izuku. Normally, he didn't do well with yelling, but what he was suggesting. Izuku looked at this hero in front of him. These people exist, and boy, Izuku was going to have fun destroying him for even proposing such a thing. So you wanted me to leave her? Obviously, she's just a kid. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She was asking for help, and he was arrested. It doesn't matter, kid. You ruined everything. Now we're back to square one. You should have let her go back. The amount of times Izuku heard these words. He's a kid. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It doesn't matter. He's lying. Let him go. His mother is a nice lady. She's never do this. I don't believe you. Stop lying, brat. Lucky your mother kept you. It was safe to say, Izuku was mad. Doesn't matter. Little kid doesn't know what she's talking about. No, he wasn't mad. He was pissed. And his face showed it. As the room got slightly colder all of a sudden. Shoto would never admit this to anyone. But right now that kid's energy rivaled Nezu. Murray was either killing Rock Lock or himself. He didn't know. Awada was on the verge on strangling that stupid man. Excuse me, Izuku replied in a cold voice, making the man freeze. I ruined the operation. Okay, I can give you that. But for the sake of a project, you'd send an abused girl back to her tormentor. No fucking way I'd let you do that. A little girl comes up to you and says to help her. You can clearly see the bandages on her arms, and even if you didn't, that was still a red flag. It wasn't a kid joking about running away, you fucking idiot. It was a terrified child trying to be free. And honestly, what I did today, you never could have never done in a million years, and you know why? It's because you're a fucking coward. I would love to have you off this rescue turned capture. But we both know that would not be a smart idea. Even if we don't actually need you now, it's still better to be safe since I opted out of this mission taking care of said child, and since I already took care of the asshole of a man. Throughout the whole speech, Izuku never once let his head fall. He held it up high and looked Rock Lock right in the eye, making the man pale and clearly uncomfortable. Izuku looked at everyone's shocked faces, then at Eris. His little girl had her eyes and mouth wide open as she looked at him in awe and wonder once again. It made him feel proud. He smiled as she hugged his neck tighter. He chose to ignore the tears because he could feel her slight happiness and hope. He nodded at Nighteye, trusting the man to tell him everything later, went out the door and never looked back. He could have sworn both Nighteye and Aizawa looked like proud parents for a second. He looked at Eri once more on his way to Nighteye's office again to wait to be escorted to the hospital with her, and nodded to himself. He'd do it again in a heartbeat. And he hoped Eri knew that too. The wait wasn't long. but the silence was good for both Eri and Izuku. The little girl has yet to let go of him, and he hasn't complained once. When Aizawa and Nighteye arrived, they went down to the underground parking to get in the car. Getting to the hospital didn't take long either, and by the looks of how fancy it is, Izuku knew it was meant for heroes. And so they headed to the desk up front and let Nighteye talk to the receptionist. Izuku suspected the man talked to the person in charge to let them in urgently since Eri's case is related to the ongoing Yakuza investigation. Izuku knew that Tsukachi will appear later to ask Eri about overhaul and collect information. But Izuku won't let him. Not now, at least. They were told to follow a nurse to a room on a higher floor they were in, and so they took the elevator. Eri was anxious. Izuku felt it, because he'd never been afraid of the elevator, and it kind of explains the closeness with the nurse and the two heroes next to them. Finally, after a tense ride, they arrived at the right floor and walked toward the assigned room. Izuku was about to enter with Eri still in his arms when the nurse stopped him. She started speaking in a bored voice. "I'm sorry," she said in the least apologetic voice. "Only the girl is admitted to this room. She needs to undergo some tests as well as a physical since this case is one of the highest we've had. Not to mention her quirk could be anything because we haven't been given any information yet. We need to be aware of everything." "No." The nurse looked at him with a raised eyebrow. "No, kid, you can't go in. I'm getting in whether you allow me or not." He cut her off and spoke in a professional voice with a cold look. "She's a minor, and she's under my care at the moment. She won't do any tests as she just escaped from somewhere she's been imprisoned in for years, and she's most likely safe with me since she obviously doesn't trust anyone, mostly adults. You won't allow any doctors in, and the only people allowed in are myself, Nighteye, Eraserhead, and Bubble Girl. Anyone else requesting to get in will have to pass by me first, so I can approve whether this person is allowed in. I will not leave her side. I will not let anyone touch her. And if anyone ignores anything from what I said, believe me, I will not only set Netsu on this hospital, but All Might will join in on the fun. And we don't want that, now do we?" The nurse was pale, shaking and sweating bullets as she replied, "And no, sir. Thank you." He nodded politely because that's the least he could do after all that, and went in the room with two wide-eyed heroes behind them. He sat on the bed and put the hand that wasn't holding Eri on her hair and began to stroke her hair. "It's okay. I won't let anyone touch you or hurt you anymore." She fell asleep, not long after he spoke without saying anything, but he knows she feels safe. He knows, because she fell asleep on him. His adorable baby felt he was trustworthy enough to sleep with him playing with her hair. He felt happy and tired. It was a long day, and by the looks from the window on the left side of the bed, it was nighttime. Nighteye sighed. "All right," he spoke in a quiet voice. "I will inform Tsukachi to not come until she's ready. I haven't any doubt the whole hospital staff was ordered not to enter this room, but just to be safe, Aizawa will stay." As he finished talking, Izuku can't help but pick up some slight resignation when he said his teacher was staying. Maybe that was his exhaustion speaking, but did Aizawa just smirk at Nighteye? Whatever, Izuku was too tired to think. And he felt the vestiges wanted to talk to him. From his blurry vision, almost asleep, he could make out Aizawa muttering, "Only you, problem child." As he sat on the chair next to the bed, Izuku snuggled closer to Eri and fell asleep. Opening his eyes, Izuku saw all the vestiges again. This time, though, they were arguing about something and two of them were surrounding a sheepish-looking second. He could hear something about too much, and not the time and asshole. Izuku was confused. "What's going on?" He let his voice echo through the void, making everyone stop speaking and pay attention to the greenette standing awkwardly. Nana came and hugged him while apologizing on behalf of Second. Why was she saying sorry to him? Izuku asked her, and Second replied saying, "I gave you my quirk." "What? Why?" Izuku asked curiously. He wasn't mad or anything. He just wanted to know why he gave him the quirk since the vestiges told him they'll only give him 2 quirks, not 3. "When you held Eri, He cut himself off sighing, getting a faraway look in his eyes. "You felt the exact emotions I felt when I met my adopted daughter, back when I was alive. That moment reminded me so much of my old days that I panicked and transferred my quirk to you. It's called Soul Bond. Self-explanatory, but the quirk allows you to bond with a person, or even an animal, allowing you to feel their emotion. My quirk only got stronger when I received one for all, but all I know about the improvement is that you can send the person you bonded with emotions. There might be more, and with your theory about the quirks surpassing their original strength, it's safe to assume the quirk will improve even more. I don't know if it's a lasting effect, Although I know you can pause your connection with the person you're bonded with, but you can't stop it entirely, so that might change. Again, I'm not sure. Izuku's head was turning. The vestiges were looking at him in concern. All he could get out at that moment was, "Is that why there's another yellow light there? 'Cause that's eerie." If the vestiges weren't dead, he'd kill them himself. "For the last time, we already have all the evidence we need for you to go to jail. Pictures, audios, and videos. So all I ask if you is to give me a verbal affirmation. You're going to be imprisoned anyway, sir. Better do this the easy way." Naomasa has been in the station for an hour and a half, spending it interviewing the Aldera staff for more information. Apparently, there was a few that were never shown, like his trips to and from the nurse's office. They did see him go to the nurse, but since there weren't any cameras in the office itself due to privacy, Naomasa had to hear all about how the quirkless brat didn't deserve treatment, and how a useless thing like him shouldn't be selfish and use their products. The detective also questioned the lunch lady and the janitor, who were possibly the nicest ones out of all the staff, considering they didn't care about his status so much, but were threatened to lose their jobs if they help him in any way. Naomasa went through about 5 coffee pots. Not 5 drinks, 5 fucking pots. Sansa didn't give him the side-eye for drinking so much caffeine, because the cat-headed officer was hissing at every staff member that walked next to him. Thankfully though, Naomasa finished with more evidence than they had before, which shouldn't be celebratory, but considering the outcome of all this. Yeah, Naomasa was ever so thankful to finish. Sansa wanted to calm down, so he went out somewhere, leaving Naomasa to sit in his office for a moment of peace. His phone rang. The detective swore he never regretted working so much until today. He picked up the phone after seeing Hawk's name on the caller ID. He knew Hawks never called. Never mind calling his private number. "Hello? Hey, detective," started Hawks. "Good news and bad news. Which one do you want first?" He sighed. "Good news. He's unconscious." Naomasa sat up. "Wahoo. The villain we caught." "You already encountered a villain?" he asked. Hawks hummed. "Yeah, with Izuku's history, I don't find that hard to believe." "What's the bad news then?" The nervous laugh Hawks let out was enough to make Naomasa think that this wasn't a normal villain. And he was right after Hawks answered with, "It's Kai Chisaki, the Yakuza leader." "Fuck. Yeah?" The silence over the phone was filled with tension. Until the great number 3 hero ended the call with, "Oh, and we got a kid out of it too." "What?" Hawks wait. But the phone was already hung up. Well, at least this time Naomasa will drink pure alcohol rather than coffee. Because the scene he arrived at with extra officers, just in case something were to happen, was exactly the one he's imagined, but not quite what he thought the unconscious villain would be wrapped in. No, Naomasa never thought of seeing another quirk being used like that by Izuku. And was that a kid? Right, Hawks said they got a kid out of it. And from the looks of her, she didn't have a good life. He never said a word as he motioned the cops that were with him to take the still knocked out Chisaki. He just noticed Eraserhead and Nighteye get closer to the kids. Both Hawks and Naomasa knew they were in safe hands, so the winged hero joined him to the station. Hawks left after realizing that Chisaki won't wake up from the head injury, he inquired. Naomasa would ask for a raise after Izuku's investigation and the raid on the Shy Hasakai. Or he would quit. Metaphorically. Because that's the only job he has now. Speaking of job, he wonders what the chief of police is doing with that quirkest cop Bubble Girl told him about yesterday. After talking with the Vestiges more, and receiving more apologies from Second, he woke up a few minutes earlier than Eri. Izuku laid there with the little girl hugging him so tight, as though he would disappear any moment, which Izuku understands more than anyone. He slowly sat up, careful to not wake her up, when a nurse knocked on the door as gently as they could. Said nurse informed him that he has visitors, and he brightened up slightly when he heard that the visitors were his friends from the upcoming raid with Aizawa. Though he was confused as to why Mei was here, considering the raid team was secret. Momo, Acha-chan, Tsu and Kirishima came in after Mei and Aizawa. His homeroom teacher nodded at them and told them to be quiet since Eri was still asleep. One by one, his friends came to say hi to him. Momo kissed him on the cheek. Tsu and Acha-chan hugged him as much as they could, still being careful of Eri. Mei ruffled his hair in an attempt to make it messier. He sent her his kitten glare, as they call it, where he puffs his cheeks and looks away on purpose. Izuku could see Kirishima being surprised at the affection his friends gave him. And he gets it, since they aren't normally that affectionate in front of anyone other than their own friend group. The redhead still waved at him in greeting. "It's good to see you guys," he said in a quiet voice. But May, what are you doing here? I thought that mission was secret. He addressed the last question to the 4 hero students. It still is, the pink-haired girl answered. Well, actually, they wanted more heroes, but they were scared that this will go public because Endeavor and the top 5 were part of the heroes that almost joined. But they had the choice between support or publicity. Most of them wanted publicity, so you could imagine what Nighteye did. May snorted. So then Power Loader Sensei was asked to help with his equipment, and since he's my mentor, I joined the team and displayed some of my stuff too. They loved it. Yes, well, you could see the appreciation on the heroes that only want attention. Momo said sarcastically. Lucky for them, they weren't fired from the team. Unlucky for us, they're still here. She huffed. Okay, interrupted Acha-chan. We're mad and whatever. I just want to know who this little sweet girl is. She gasped dramatically. Did you kidnap her, Izu-kun? With his history of adopting kids, I wouldn't put it aside, Kiro. Look at Kota. Yeah, but Midabro has to have a reason for taking her. Guys, I didn't kidnap her. She was in the Yakuza's possession until Hawks and I bumped into her. I knocked the guy out before doing anything. Oh yes, we heard about that from Nighteye. They gave us a brief summary of what happened. Mused Momo. So she's your kid now? Asked a bemused May. He looked her dead in the eyes and responded with, yes, I'm not leaving her, she's mine. The others blinked at him before laughing as quietly as they could. After a few minutes of calming down, Acha-chan ended up wheezing, and they started to laugh again. After calming down once again, they talked for a bit, but left shortly after they realized Eri was waking up. Izuku told them it wasn't the best time to meet her now, even when May said, but I want her to meet Aunt May. Eri opened her eyes, slowly adjusting to the bright lights of the hospital room. She rubbed her face and focused her attention on Izuku. It looked like she couldn't believe he was real. You're here, she said, which made him certain that she thought he was going to go away once she falls asleep. Izuku smiled at her and gave her a pat on her hair, telegraphing his movements. I'll always be here, Eri. I'll never leave, okay? And that, he guessed, was the final straw for the little girl. She began crying silently until Izuku picked her up and hugged her, while putting his cheek on her head, which promptly made her sob harder. He swears if Overhaul wasn't in police custody right now, he'd go over there and kill him. He continued to pet her hair, and making shushing noises to try and get her to settle down, which somehow worked. She sniffed and whispered, sorry. It's okay, he murmured. You're allowed to cry. You're very nice. Izuku gulped and swallowed the urge to murder some villains, instead bringing her into another hug. He knew she needed as much affection as he could give her, and knowing Izuku, he'd never back down when it comes to Eri. She cut herself off to breathe. Eri put her head down and said, you're just like me. I was. He admitted because of the curious expression on her face. He wouldn't lie to her. She needed to know that he understands. Did someone save you? Izuku thought about the current incidents. How he's saved from his mother, his school being taken care of, and finally trusting someone for the first time. He had Sasaki-san, Bubbles, Aizawa-san, Yamada, Nedzu, and so many more people that took time out of their day just to help Izuku. At last he smiled. Yeah, they did. They're my family. Now my family is your family. Would you like that? He asked, which set her off to cry again. Well, she gets the crying from him for some apparent reason. After Eri finished crying, Izuku was again informed by a nurse that Yamada-sensei was coming with Tsukachi for the questioning. The raid on the Yakuza must be happening soon, he thought. He looked at the white-haired girl on his lap with a soft expression. Eri, he said in a low voice to not startle her. She hummed in response, turning to look at him. There's a nice detective coming here later, and another one of my teacher. They're here to ask questions about the bad man you were with. Is that okay? She played with her hands before asking, are you going to, stay with me? He silently coos to himself. He'll get himself killed before someone hurts her. And even then, no one will dare hurt her with the people backing him up. I'll always stay, Eri. Whenever you want. All you have to do is ask. Okay, little Snow. Then, oh, okay. She nodded. Then her face turned confused. What's a snow? Oh, that got Izuku wondering. If she doesn't know what snow is, then they must have not let her go out a lot. And that makes his blood boil more than it did before. That's the white stuff that coats the ground in winter. Everything looks magical and like a fairyland. It can rain snow too. They're little soft white drops of ice that comes down. When it does, we'll go, okay? Really? She asked with stars in her eyes. Of course. And if you can't wait, He picked up his phone from the side table. I can show you here. They spent the next few minutes looking at pictures and videos of snowflakes falling down and snow engulfing a large amount of the street people are walking on. Izuku could tell Eri was fascinated because the stars in her eyes only grew. And even if she isn't smiling right now, he'll do whatever it takes to get her to smile again. A knock was heard on the door, which notified Izuku that Tsukachi and Yamada have arrived. He told Eri just as much, and she tensed against him, and the quirk bond between them spiked in uneasiness. He put his hand on her hair and called out, "Come in," for the detective and the voice hero to enter. After exchanging pleasantries, Yamada-sensei, who told Izuku he can just call him Yamada or Hizashi, announced that he was the one staying with them today, and that Midnight Sensei brought some clothes for Eri so she can change and be comfortable in something other than the gray ragged dress she's wearing. Eri was asked by Tsukachi if it was okay to ask about the man she was imprisoned by, and her answer was the same as before. Only this time she held his hand in nervousness. Then the questions started. It was as if Izuku was there with her in that cage the villain called room. He could see snippets of memories she was thinking off during the questioning. He held her tighter and forced some calm thoughts to get her to not tense as much. The answers she gave were more than enough to imprison, overhaul, and execute him. In the middle of the whole thing, the nurse came in with some food for both Eri and Izuku. They took a much-needed break and continued on. The horrors she lived through had Izuku so angry that Eri got scared of the weird sensation and stopped in confusion and tears. He had to pet her hair to calm her down again. At the end of the interview, all three of them were still shell-shocked about everything, but Tsukachi managed to break out of his thoughts and thank Eri for being brave, then left. Yamada stayed just as he said. Once the blonde told Eri he was a hero, she asked, like Izu, all cutely making Izuku's heart melt. Yamada then answered with certainty, "Well, yes, kind of. He's a much better hero than I am." Izuku looked at his teacher with so much emotion on his face, trying to keep from crying. But that didn't happen after the soft smile and nod Yamada sent his way. He started to bawl like a baby, reassuring a suddenly worried Eri their happy tears. Hizashi was so close to take both of them into his arms and hugging them so tight, Shota would have to pry him off. He silently prayed for the custody papers to go through for both of them. Neither Aizawa or Murray ever liked, and will never like, parent-teacher conferences. The moment the Bakugas got in the office, he knew. Oh God, Murray just knew this will end up in a disaster. Aizawa did too, judging by his even more deadpan expression than usual. Bakugu's dad sat between his wife and son. The three looked confused as to why Murray took the empty seat next to Mrs. Bakugu. And closest to Aizawa, who was still standing to the latter man's rotten luck, he can suck it because he got to sit with both Izuku and Eri yesterday. Izuku was deemed without a guardian. Since Inko had been arrested and his so-called father wanted nothing to do with him, a small side quest Murray went on calling Mr. Midoriya, only for the bastard to thankfully want nothing to do with Izuku, which was a sad but good thing for them. And that made it easier for Murray to use the emergency foster license before Aizawa could. They still agreed for the share custody when the foster home works, and after the clearance with the kid's new social worker. Said social worker has been chosen for Izuku and Eri to take care of the adoption situation and join in on the case. They were Tsukachi's close friend in the station, and proved trustworthy last time the two overprotective father's men talked to them. Nedzu greeted them politely. "Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Bakugu and Katsuki Bakugu. I have sent you that email to discuss about your son." "Yeah, okay, what did the brat do now?" Mrs. Bakugu said as politely and rudely as it came out. Murray was starting to dislike that woman. "And you said this has to do with Izuku? And that was a parent meeting or some shit? Where's Inko?" Both Aizawa and Murray tensed in hearing her name, but composed themselves as much as they could. Nedzu took the lead in explaining what the components of the email meant. "Yes, it is a parent meeting. Unfortunately, Inko Midoriya was deemed unfit as guardian for Izuku. Hence why Sasaki took the lead in the guardianship. Now about..." "Wait, what does that mean, unfit as a guardian?" Woman cut the principal in an underlying concerned tone, still managing to get the words out rudely. "What the hell does that mean?" "Well, from my recent discoveries, we found out that Inko Midoriya was abusing her son for years, both mentally and physically. Hence why she is an unfit guardian." "That's bullshit," shouted the smaller blonde. Murray could only hope his left ear will make it after this meeting. "Auntie is the nicest woman I've ever met. She couldn't have been abusing Deku. He's lying." "Yeah, whatever he said." The lady agreed with her son. "We just saw Inko like 3 weeks ago, and she was telling us how little Izuku's school is going. Murai cleared, making the attention go on him for a moment. I am the new guardian, as the principal said. I'm going to have to ask you to keep the language as clean as you can and not use the name Deku anymore. And about Inko, she's been put into a cell and told to wait for the hearing next week so she can officially jailed. We've taken upon us to interview and take evidence of the abuse, which has been proven successful since we had a good detective with us, and not counting all the scars. It took half an hour to calm the woman Bakugo, and her son, the husband, just sat shocked in the chair, pale as sheet, and tell them that no person not taking part of the case is allowed to see the files of pictures. And no, we are not lying. We had a detective with a lie detector quirk help. It took another half an hour of calming a shouting Mrs. Bakugo and a protesting Mr. Bakugo, only the parents, not the child. Which wasn't all that surprising, telling them that the Izuku's guardians were approved by both his social worker and Izuku himself. Aizawa also mentioned that there was another child added in the last 2 days, and that heroes were the best bet in keeping Izuku and the kid safe. Skipping over this exhausting part, which Murai knows was only the tip of the reasons, they headed over to the next portion. The kid Bakugo. Nedzu started out simple. What we originally brought you here for was to discuss your son's behavior. Oh, Katsuki? He's always been a piece of shit in school. She smiled and waved her hand. It's only because the teachers keep feeding his ego. Whatever, it's the same here, right? Aizawa took over to answer that question, face void of emotions. No, I don't take the liberty to hand out compliments freely. Or feed his ego. He sighed, and Murai could feel how exhausted that sigh was. We're talking about the bullying. Bullying? The brown-haired man frowned in confusion. Sure, Katsuki has anger issues, but he's never bullied anyone. The blonde woman nodded, though she seemed to be holding so many words back. The Bakugo kid, however, looked almost nervous under the warning scowl he sent the principal and the heroes present. Ah, so neither parent knew of the events that occurred in middle school or elementary, thought Murai. This will be fun. Unfortunately, Mr. and Mrs. Bakugo, you are wrong. How about I show something? They spent the next few minutes reliving what they witnessed a few days ago in Tsukachi's. Only this time the only videos that were shown were the ones Bakugo was in, as the meeting was about him. Bakugo's parents watched as their son tormented not only Izuku, but Nedzu found some videos displaying Bakugo's behavior towards other students as well. They watched as the blonde kid pushed, laughed at, bruised, kicked, and done so many things to kids that didn't deserve the torment. Including suicide baiting, calling kids future villains, calling the kids themselves useless. When it ended, everyone sat in silence to give the parents some time to breathe and comprehend what was watched. Nedzu, thankfully, took the lead once again and informed the unanimous decision everyone made. If those records were written down, Katsuki Bakugo should have never been able to get into UA, let alone UA's hero course. Unfortunately for us, this year has proven to be quite difficult for all students in dealing with the League of Villains. As a result, we concluded that expulsion was not an option. At that, the kid Bakugo looked slightly relieved, but he paled even more than before after hearing Nedzu say, "With that in mind, we will be keeping an eye on your son. But he will not be staying in the hero course." The rodent turned to look directly at the parents. You have two choices for letting keep studying, and us teachers thought the second option was easier in regard of Izuku Sasaki's mental health. Would you like to hear them? Mrs. Bakugo nodded, while the kid still sat shell-shocked in his seat, silently. He will either have to stay in general education here in UA, or continue general education in Shiksu Academy. What? Came the shout from the smaller Bakugo. What about the hero course? You won't be able to join with your black marks on your records. Aizawa said in a cold voice accompanied with a quirk-infused glare as a warning to make him sit. As Aizawa said, after the proof we collected, you will not be able to join any hero course in any hero school, in Japan or outside of Japan. In addition to this, your son will have to attend therapy and anger management regularly. He will be asked from time to time to help the community or the school he will attend in their activity. If you choose for him to stay at UA, rest assured he will be protected and monitored by Present Mike. However, if you choose for him to attend Shiksu, the hero who will be taking care of his safety is Miss Steele. Well, what is your choice? Giving the parents some time to think and talk among themselves, Murai returned to his own thoughts. With the help of a little girl, they managed to gather enough information to commence the raid on the Yakuza tomorrow. The only problem was, where will Izuku and Eri stay? Murai doesn't trust Iwata right now because there is a literal child in their care and a teenager. Their best bet was to send them to Aizawa's house. Luckily for Murai, Aizawa will accompany him for the raid. Unluckily, his husband existed. But for the safety of his kids, he'll do anything. So Aizawa's house it was. What the hell? What if I join another hero school's hero course? It seems Bakugo came out of his shocked stage, Murray thought. Whatever do you mean? Questioned the scary rodent out of curiosity. Bakugo scowled. You said Yua and Shiksu's hero course. What about Ketsubutsu? Oh, you must have misheard me. I already said you won't be allowed to join any hero course in any hero school, no matter where you travel to. That's not fucking fair. Murray frowned. He turned to Teenager and addressed him. Yes, well, with what you did, I'd say you got left off easy. That shit is in the past. You have no fucking right to kick me out of the hero course just because of my part actions. If that damn nerd is as fucking worthless as he was before he got his quirk, none of you would have cared. He shouted as if they weren't in the room with him. Murray immediately disagreed. Izuku is by far the nicest and kindest kid he's ever met. Not that he met a lot of kids, but it still counts. It didn't matter whether or not he possessed a quirk. An abused kid is still an abused kid. Every measure would have been taken in this to save him, or anyone else. And Aizawa pretty much confirmed it. Who said quirks matter in this? Asked Aizawa with a quirk-infused glare as he approached the desk, putting his hands on it to get his point across. Not once did we bring up the topic of quirks. And rest assured, quirk or no quirk, we would have taken the same treatment we're taking right now. He let go of his quirk, turning to address the parents instead. Have you come to a decision? Okay, yeah, I think we're making the right choice. Hey, I'm saying I don't fucking want to. I'm gonna be number one. You don't get it, do you, child? Snapped Murray. With what you've done, you can no longer be a hero. Be glad your old victims didn't leak anything, and your teachers were unfortunately on your side. Or else we'd have a different situation on our hands. Now hurry up with the decision. We have other matters to attend to. Mr. Bakugo looked at the principal. Nedzu, how good of a hero would you say Miss Steele is? In terms of protecting a teenager? Mr. Bakugo looked at the principal. I think letting him stay at Yua under extra and specialized protection would be the best course of action. What? Growled the youngest in the room, though no one paid attention to him. Shiksu is the second school I trust in keeping a child safe. I guarantee he will be all right there. Maybe some new friends will do his redemption route well. Mr. Bakugo nodded. Then our choice is clear. Katsuki will attend Shiksu. Well, then Aizawa will fill out the transfer paperwork. Nedzu then opened the door, and the action clearly meant for the meeting to end. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Of course. I hope you shut that school down. Mrs. Bakugo fiercely getting herself and her once again shell-shocked son up. And please tell me Izu-kun will go to therapy. Don't worry. He will be receiving the best treatment possible. With a nod from both Murray and Aizawa, the Bakugas left the heroes to their thoughts. God, groaned the black-hair man. That shouldn't have taken us 2.5 hours. We're lucky it ended when it did, responded Murray. You really think the kid will cooperate? Aizawa asked with an eyebrow raised. You really think letting him stay at Yua is the best choice? Aizawa asked with an eyebrow raised. Nedzu hummed. He will have to. What do I tell the class? Asked the underground hero. Oh, I have already prepared for that, Nedzu stated. Here is what you should say and what to avoid. An hour after Yamada, Izuku and Eri descended into a pleasant conversation about different kinds of heroes, not forgetting to mention Aizawa and Sasaki. The door suddenly opened, and in comes Bubbles while Izuku is happy to see her. He wonders why the nurse didn't come and tell them. Then he remembered she was on the visitors list and introduced herself to Eri in a gentle manner. Hi Eri. I'm Iwata. My hero and me is Bubble Girl, but Izu calls me Bubbles. Can I? Eri cut herself off before turning to Izuku, as if asking permission to ask a question. He squashes down the anger towards Chisaki and nods with a soft smile. Can I call you that too? Of course you can, sweetie, Bubbles giggled. Oh, by the way, she turned to address the voice hero and the green-haired teen on the bed while taking a seat next to Yamada. Nighteye told me that he and Aizawa are coming in a few minutes. They have a meeting with some people. The blue-skinned girl said. He didn't tell me who, but it sounded important. Yamada hummed. Oh yeah, Shouta told me about that. It's with Bakugo and his parents. He sighed tiredly, making him age a few years. We came together and made a decision about his punishment, waiting on Shota to finish. And that made Izuku pause. A meeting with Kaken, Auntie Mitsuki and Uncle Masaru. Then he realized it must be about middle school. Punishment. What punishment is he getting? The blond man rubbed his neck. He's being put in therapy and anger management. Some community service and helping teachers in tasks. And I won't lie to you, Green Bean. He has a choice between two options concerning his new classes. New classes? Yeah, he's being put in Gen Ed. The choice is actually either staying at UA and being supervised by me, or attending Gen Ed's class at Shiksu. Boo, he's going to be a hero. No, Green Bean, I'm sorry. But he doesn't deserve it. Izuku, interrupted Bubbles. With what he did in middle school, can you blame them for making a decision like that? Besides, she scoffed, if it weren't for villains, he'd be expelled on the spot. Is this the wrong time? Questioned a new but familiar voice. No, I think we came right on time, said Aizawa as he pushed his in and gave his husband a kiss on the cheek. Sasaki-san. Hello, Izuku corrected himself. Iwata was trying really hard not to squeal at the slip-up. His mentor chuckled, not noticing his slip-up. Right, kid. No need to be loud. Izuku almost called him dad. Izuku almost called him dad. And as scary and exciting as this was, he had other things to worry about. What happened to Kaken? Sasaki-san sat down on the edge of the bed, waving to Eri, who waved back a small one. We just finished the meeting. It was exhausting, if I'm being honest. Izuku stumbled, trying to get his sentence out the right way. Not that. I mean, where is he? The choice. What did he? Oh, that. Sasaki-san sighed. He's transferring to Shiksu, admitted Aizawa, taking over. His parents thought trusting another school with his protection is better than UA since the disasters with the League. Also, they think that getting time off there and starting fresh is the best course of action. Aizawa must have read through his expression, because he softly said, It's not your fault, kid, you know that, right? He's staying at UA, admitted Aizawa, taking over. His parents are letting him stay because at least it'd be a familiar place with familiar surroundings. And he's being supervised alone. So the attention and the meaning of his safety will solely rely on Mike and a few other heroes. Aizawa must have read through his expression, because he softly said, It's not your fault, kid, you know that, right? If he wasn't discovered, Izuku started, but couldn't finish his sentence. Sasaki-san put his hand on his hair and ruffled it, lightly saying, You'd still be hurt, and he'd be at fault all the time. Whether it's the guilt over time or discovering what he's done a few years later, the same outcome will turn up of it. And you weren't the only kid. There were others he called names and pushed to the brink of giving up. So it might take you some time to accept it. But it isn't, and will never be your fault. Izuku sniffed, making Eri look at him in worry. Happy tears. He admitted quietly while wiping them. And his dad was right. It will take him some time to accept that Kaken wasn't a good person or friend. But at least he had his family by side to help him. Boo, the soft looks in everyone's eyes around the room. He was right. It won't be until tonight. With Izuku on the verge of falling asleep, will he realize he called Sasaki-san his dad? And he doesn't regret it. Aizawa got up and sighed. That's enough emotion for today, he said, making everyone, sans Eri, laugh. We've signed Eri's discharge papers already. We're going to our house because we thought it'd be better than an apartment. Plus, you'll have Hisashi to look after. And everyone laughed again while preparing to leave. Getting in one car after leaving the building shouldn't have been as hard. But with that many people, Izuku wonders how they managed. It didn't take them long to arrive at Aizawa and Yamada's house. Dad and Bubbles decided to stay and spend the night in one of their guest bedrooms. There were 3 bedrooms in the house. One for Aizawa and Yamada, and the other 2 were guest rooms. Dad and Bubbles took one room in Izuku, and Eri took the other since Eri is attached to him right now. Izuku changed in comfortable sweatpants and a short-sleeved shirt, putting his scars on display. Eri was given a long shirt, so she can wear it instead of the gray one she's been in the last few days. When Izuku came out of the bathroom that was in the room, Eri looked at him in awe and wonder again. You have scars like me, she whispered. And that night was spent with Izuku telling Eri stories about some of his scars, until she fell asleep. Normally, kids would ask for fairy tale stories to bed. But in this case, she wanted what someone had in common with her. It was the morning after, and Hisashi woke up alone in bed with a note stuck on his forehead. He sat up, confused as to why it was there. Taking it off, he read what was written on it and understood why his husband was nowhere in the room, and why he woke up late in the morning. Sunshine. Sasaki and I left for the raid. Didn't want to wake you up. Take care of our kids. P.S. If Iwata is still here, kick her out. The blonde chuckled. shaking his head at his husband's words, and mentally wished him good luck on the raid. If Shouta doesn't come back home, he stopped his thoughts from becoming bad. Sure, he was worried for his love just like any other person would be in this situation. But he had to keep his thoughts positive. He shook his head again, put his hearing aids in his ears, and went to the bathroom to clean himself. After that small trip, he went downstairs and took notice of the silence in the house. The others are still asleep. While going down the hallway, he saw Izuku and Eri both still asleep, apparently dead to the world, the little one clutching Izuku as if he was going to run away. He silently coos to himself and took a picture to show Shota later. Hisashi went on his way to the kitchen and began breakfast. He guessed and hoped both kids would appreciate eggs and pancakes this morning. He also started making coffee for both him and Iwata. A few minutes went by, and the food was done. Iwata came down the stairs, yawning and asking Hisashi if she could help. He nodded and told her to set the table. They worked together with the blue-skinned girl finishing the table. Hisashi finished the food, and both kids came down yawning with Eri on Izuku's hip. It seems as if she isn't letting go quite yet. Izuku greeted them politely before Iwata kissed his cheek and smiled at Eri in response, and sat down at the table with Hisashi's persistence. The littlest one sat on his lap and looked at the food in almost awe. The blonde man quietly squashed down the anger at Chisaki and focused on piling some food on the kids' plates. The brunette placed Eri on the chair next to him, insisting that he won't go anywhere and will be staying right next to her, and started eating after he did. It was both adorable and startling to see both of them get attached to each other like that. The little one won't leave Izuku alone even for a second, and Hisashi knows they deserve that and more. He promised himself to spoil them rotten with everything he had. Eri loved the pancakes from the starry eyes she made after that first bite. She didn't smile, but the little MHM was enough for Hisashi. Izuku thanked them for the food, which melted Hisashi's heart into a puddle. After breakfast, the blonde hero informed the kids and Iwata of their plans to go to an ice cream shop and to the mall to buy a few things. They agreed and got ready, since all Eri had was a dirty dress and hospital clothes. Lucky for them, Nimuri managed to get small-sized pants and a sweater for the kid. Luckily for Hisashi, the woman didn't buy the entire store and managed to be satisfied with one dress and 2 shirts, and 1 pair of pants. They all got in the car with Hisashi driving, Iwata in the passenger's seat, and the kids in the back. The blonde silently wished Shota was here, but he remained hopeful. The drive was short, because the park was near the house, although, Hisashi guessed, it would have been better to go there by car than walking, seeing as they were going to walk anyway. Hisashi and Iwata went and sat on a bench in front of the park to look out for his kids, while Izuku took it upon himself to teach her how to play on the swings. First, he got on with her on his lap, and when her eyes sparkled, he started to teach her how to swing herself, even if he was the one to do it all this time. The blue-skinned girl went and joined them with Hisashi taking pictures that may or may not be transported into a family photo album. He joined in on some of the pictures, making silly faces when he noticed Eri thinking about something with her head down. "Eri, are you okay?" Izuku asked worryingly. He felt some confusion from their bond, which he still hadn't told Eri about, and the promise to Nana. He made a mental note to do both later and some shame. Was she ashamed of the pictures? Does she hate them? The one-horned girl lifted her head up, and in the most genuine and innocent voice, she asked, "How do I smile again?" making Izuku pause and breaking his heart further. That wasn't a question a 6-year-old baby should ask. He'd only known Eri for a few days, and already he was attached. The bond didn't matter because Izuku knew he'd love her just as much with or without the bond. Though, in that moment, he felt pure rage directed at Chisaki. How dare he make a little girl as innocent and precious as Eri feel this way? No kid should question their happiness, and absolutely no kid should be deprived of that. Whatever he did to that villain, he deserved worse. If only he could go to where he is being kept and beat the shit out of him again and again, until he was nothing but a figment of everyone's imagination. Izuku had to think of Eri right now and comfort her. His thoughts process only took 2 seconds, but in those 2 seconds, he felt more shame and embarrassment from his little girl, so he pushed down any angry feelings he had, and hoped she hadn't felt them, crouched in front of her, and held her hands in his. "Well, Eri, I only smile when I feel happy, or when I'm next to people I feel safe with. Or when I'm having fun with my friends, and especially with you." He brought a hand to her head and silently celebrates, because she didn't hesitate to lean into his touch and didn't flinch either. But then she tilts her head in confusion. "I feel safe with you, Izu. Why can't I smile?" And if that didn't break his heart more, he doesn't know what will. It's been a long time since you felt safe, and it'll take some more time, but you'll smile again. Don't worry, sweetie. He smiles at the end, and she nods, looking determined. Throughout this conversation, Hisashi and Iwata almost cried because of how sad and adorable this was. They didn't know if that was concerning. Hisashi was thinking of the next part of their plan, which was ice cream, and Iwata was considering murder for the nth time. Eri was confused. Ever since Izu saved her, she felt confused. So many things happened in so little time. Her abuser had gone. She was living with her favorite person in the world, and 2 other people who were really nice too. There were other people who care about, which surprised her, because she didn't think any of those things while she was with Chisaki-san. She didn't think anyone would have the same experience as her, felt the same pains as her, and knows what it's like to have no one to feel safe with. She begged and begged for someone to save her, but all hope was lost. Then Izu came and made her feel all funny inside, which she now knows is happiness. He knew what it was like to be hurt by someone you love. He knew what being alone felt like. He understood Eri because he was like her. Still, she couldn't smile, and even though Izu told her it was okay, and that it would take some time because of her trauma, she knows that word has a bad meaning. But she wanted to smile for her hero. She wanted a smile like his. Because when Izu smiles, she feels happier. It was like the first time she ran into him and saw the sun. Yeah, he was like the sun. All happy and safe and warm, and she liked that. Eri liked that very much, and she didn't want it to end. And it wasn't going to end, because the nice yellow man promised something called ice cream, and if Izu liked it, then she definitely will. So she held his hand as they got into the car. It was really cool, and they rolled on the ground instead of walking and went to something called the mall. In the car, she asked Izu what it was, and he explained that the mall was like a giant house that has many more rooms. And those rooms are called stores. They have things you can buy and wear. She was excited, and by the smiles she received from Izu, the nice blue lady, and the yellow man, she guessed they were excited too. They got out of the car when they've reached the mall, and Eri could already tell it was bigger than their house and contained so many stores. In the end, they got her so many new things. Even if she declined at first because spending so much money on herself, she only said yes when Izuku accepted to buy things for him. Eri's been informed that the room they were staying in would be transformed to have 2 beds, one in the left corner and one in the right corner, with a desk in the middle under the window. The closet near the bathroom, and the second closet near the second bed, Eri's bed. There was also a bathroom that they could decorate, which seemed to make Mr. Yamada very happy. When they bought the toiletries, that was also a new word, and it meant a good thing. Mr. Yamada also told them that they could be living with Miss Iwata and the nice green-haired man they saw who looked a lot like Izu, so they could buy everything twice. But Eri and Izu declined because once was enough. Eri was so excited to try the things she bought today. So many nice dresses and shirts and pants and shorts and things called jumpers and shoes and a hat and private things with the help from Miss Iwata. And she was even allowed hero merch. She was sad there weren't any Deku merch, but Miss Iwata promised her to get some if she can keep it a secret. She also got things that matched Izu too. And some nice plushies and pillows and bed covers. She and Izu were both overwhelmed at everything, but Mr. Yamada said it was okay. The yellow-haired man seemed especially happy when she picked some merch from him too. When Izu told her he was a nice hero called Present Mike. It was after 5 and Mr. Yamada told them to eat lunch. They got sandwiches from a western place Mr. Yamada likes. Eri recalls him telling them they were wraps or something. She didn't remember because she was excited about what came next. Then when he came back from putting the bags in his car, it was time to get ice cream. They arrived at a cute shop, and Eri was instantly wowed. The walls were pink with yellow and purple stripes. Few white round tables with chairs. So many tubs of ice cream in the glass in front of them. Eri decided to get the same thing Izu ordered. 2 scoops of ice cream. One was chocolate, and the other was cheesecake. She didn't know what they were, but one thing for sure. Eri was eating that again if they let her. While eating, Eri didn't notice she got some sweets around her mouth, until Izu asked her if he could wipe them for her. It was then she noticed the kid and a man sitting next to them. And the man was doing the same thing Izu was doing. He was wiping his kid's chin with a napkin, just like Izu was doing to Eri right now. And when the man finished, the kid whined Papa. Eri looked at Izu and said, "Thank you, Papa," and resumed eating her ice cream. She didn't realize her face supported a small but happy smile. Or the fact that the other participants froze when they heard her. She only got a kiss on her head from Izu telling her she could call him whatever she wanted. And Eri, she felt safe and happy now. Izuku was on cloud 9. Eri just called him Papa. He was a father. To a little girl. Oh God, he was a father. To a traumatized little girl. Turning his head, he saw her smile and decided that yeah, maybe it wasn't a bad thing she sees him as her dad. Even if he had to explain that to her later. Right now, he was basking in joy. He also ignored the two adults in front of him hugging and sobbing their hearts out while the ice cream cones were melting on their hands. Hisashi wished he caught that moment on camera. Awada was going to steal them. Both of them. It was after dark when they returned home to move the bags to their room. It took some time, but they managed to get that done. After changing to more comfortable clothes, Yamada suggested they watch a movie. Izuku could tell he was worried about his husband, but he didn't want to worry the kids. The Greenette had to be honest. He was worried too. Not just about Aizawa, but also his dad. He was scared something might happen because he wasn't there. What if they needed Izuku's quirks or his analysis or plans? Or just as he was about to spiral more into the panic, the front door opened and two figures entered. Izuku flung himself off the couch with Yamada behind him to see if Aizawa and Sasaki-san were okay. And they were. Both men brushed off their concerns about the hospital, saying they didn't care about the medics because they weren't hurt, and reassured them that the raid was successful with minimal injuries. Sinking in relief, Izuku rushed to hug his dad, catching him off guard. But the tall green-haired man hugged him back and assured him that he was okay. Izuku did the same to Aizawa as much as the man was surprised, and then they all went back to the couch except Izuku and his teacher. He took a deep breath and hoped for the best. Sensei, we have school tomorrow, but I'm not leaving Eri. It's way too soon for that. May I have permission to bring her with me? Aizawa huffed. I thought something happened, kid. Yeah, you can bring her, but when she starts therapy you'll have to try. Okay, kid? And I'll inform the class in the morning to be especially quiet. He smiled his creepy grin, making Izuku chuckle in relief, nodding seemingly happy. That night was spent looking at various photos from Yamada and Awada's phones. They laughed, smiled, shook their head, and made fun of them for a while. Izuku even managed to get a picture of Yamada and Awada sobbing from when Eri called him Papa, which made both Sasaki-san and Aizawa shocked. But they still made Izuku send them the photo, despite the cries and pleas of Yamada and Awada. I didn't think you'd have it in you, Toshinori. Telling a quirkless kid they can't be a hero. You have forgotten yourself, haven't you? Principal Nedzu, I apologized for that. Yes, but your lack of attention towards your duties as a teacher concerns me. I'm having you put on probation for the time being, and have you shadow Aizawa as an assistant. From now on, only Aizawa and Vlad will be allowed to teach heroics with you assisting and watching on the sidelines. You will need to pass a teacher's licensing exam in a month to see your progress and see if you are fit to be able to teach again. Is that clear, number one hero? Why yes, Principal Nedzu. It's clear. Everyone woke up the next morning refreshed and ready to go. For the first time in a long time, Shota was happy he woke up. His gorgeous husband was next to him. His kids were in the next room, and his kids' partial parents were there as well. They had breakfast, then went on their way to UA, but not before dropping Nighteye and Bubble Girl at their agency. On the rest of the way, Shota's thoughts wandered. Not a few weeks ago, he was teaching his students, and now he had 2 kids and shared custody, not legally. But him and Sasaki were working on that with another hero. They had a teenager and a 6-year-old little girl to raise, which was new in many ways and forms. He had to look after them and make them feel safe. God, he still can't believe parents can do that to their own kids. It was lucky they caught on now, because it was better later than never. He still beat himself up for not noticing sooner, which caused his husband to give him the "it's not your fault" show talk last night. Arriving at school, he led his kids with him to class, while his husband parked the car. Shota was sure he was getting a text later, but now he focused on opening the door to his class. His students instantly quieted down. We have someone joining us today, he started. From the corner of his eye, Shota could see Izuku crouched down next to an anxious-looking Eri. You'll do your best to not say a word. Got it. He flashed his quirk to expand his point. They nodded, some a bit vigorously to the point where Shota was scared for their heads falling off, and sat in silence, looking eager at Izuku when he walked in. Or rather, the tiny person holding his hand. He could tell Ashido was about to squeal, so he used his quirk again, making her sit still. Izuku stood at the front, where everyone can see him, and the white-haired girl behind his legs. Everyone, I would like for you to meet Eri, my daughter. Most of them had whiplash at that, except the kids who went on the raid. Eri, he addressed the girl behind him in a soft tone. You can say hi to them. They're your aunties and uncles, remember. Shota can see his class's heads turn at the words aunties and uncles, but otherwise, they stayed silent. Eri bravely stepped out, still holding the problem child's hand, and looked at everyone. She was met with soft smiles and waves, responding to the wave with her free hand. Shota's heart clenched at the scene. She was adorable, but he had a class to teach. Him spoiling his daughter could wait a few hours. Izuku went to sit on desk, only for Yaoyorozu to make a smaller chair for Eri to sit in, next to her dad, which baffled him the first time he heard it, and gave him gray hairs, though he supposes he had to look the part to be called Grandpa right, swinging her feet. After some awas and coos from his students, Kirishima's hand went up and Shota had half a mind, he knows what the kid was about to ask. Sensei, we can't start class without Bakubro. Aren't we going to wait for him? He could see Izuku ducking his head, paying close attention to Eri. Shota supposes he had to get on with it. Due to some problems in middle school that were never reported, and in light of a few incidents that happened here, Bakugo will not be joining us in class anymore. He looked at the wide-eyed kids who stared at him, practically begging him to say the reason. Bullying, suicide baiting, quirk discrimination, and overall abuse of power. That's why he's not here. Let this be a lesson for all of you. We don't take things lightly here at UA. He was about to go to lay in his sleeping, but the cries of his students stopped him. Shota wanted to bash his head against the wall, but he could see Eri getting more and more panicked, even with Izuku covering her ears and petting her hair. The underground hero flashed his quirk in hopes to shut them up, and it worked. The whole class was silent in just a few seconds. Oh my god, he bullied you, didn't he? Came Yaoyorozu's voice, staring at Izuku. Several people shot appalled looks at his problem child. The kid in question got up, after leaving Eri on her chair, and looked around nervously. Yes, he did. Multiple gasps rang around the classroom. I was a late bloomer. My quirk came after middle school. It was a false negative, but everyone thought I was quirkless. And I had kind of a hard time at school and outside. Kind of, shrieked Uraraka, getting up from her seat. He suicide baited you and left you with scars, and you say kind of. Izuku, what the fuck? Ochako, please refrain from using this language. Ida chopped his way in the conversation. Then he stunned everyone by saying, but I must agree with her, Izuku-kun. What the fuck? Shota rubbed his temples. He expected some reactions, but now the hour will be wasted. And for the first time in his life, Shota wanted to teach them something. So he moved on. We will continue on with the lesson. Leave anything you have to say for later. And if I hear one more word about the Bakugo situation, I'm expelling you. Now, he turned to the board. On the topic of heroics, which of the top 10 can be considered defense heroes? And which of them can be considered offense heroes? His kid and Yaoyorozu raised their hands. Well, at least some students are back to normal. It was lunchtime and everyone went to the cafeteria to eat. Izuku and Eri went with his friends to sit at their usual table with Hitoshi, Momo, and Mei joining them. I'm glad Bakugo's gone. Ochako. Kiro. And I thought I was the blunt one in the group, said Tsu, making everyone laugh. What if we stop talking about Bakugo, and instead we talk about Izukun's daughter, asked Shota. I want to know how he got a fucking daughter in the first place. And why you four aren't surprised. Toshi, language, replied Izuku, giving Eri her bento. Ochako, Tsu, Momo and Mei were part of the raid. And I'm not allowed to say too much, but all that happened was Aijuru, Mina, Denki, Shiro, and Jiru went and sat at their table, the empty seat noticeable. Aijuru started, but couldn't even finish the sentence. He couldn't believe this. His best friend was the one thing he absolutely hates. I never thought. And when I thought, he'd be a bully. His friends were talking around him, but he couldn't bring himself to listen. Everything sounded muffled to Aijuru. Sure, he's angry. The first day, but bully. It wasn't a common fact between him and Bakugo or anyone other than Mina. But Aijuru was bullied for having a weak quirk. He was always made fun of and told by people that he should activate it on a roof to see if he could break. His moms tried to help with the situation, but the school didn't do anything. He ended up convincing them to let him stay to at least finish his last year, and they reluctantly agreed. It's surprising, and I never thought he. Now to hear what he did to people. And not just people, Izuku? Aijuru knows that guy is manly, and one of the nicest people he has ever met. So the fact that this happened breaks his heart even more. Though before he could spiral more into his deprecating thoughts, someone said, But is it? What? Voiced out Kirishima, looking at Denki in confusion. Starting to feel anxious about the stares he was getting, Denki sighed and went on explaining. I mean, is it that surprising? He was always like that. Angry, insulting everyone, and even giving us mean nicknames. We all kept reminding him of our names, but he never listens. He also called us extras every time he gets more mad than usual. And the nickname he gave me, that shouldn't be a nickname because I hate it, and it makes me feel stupid. And Izuku, you know what happens every time the poor guy is near him. He's right, came Mina's hoarse voice in an attempt to speak. She cleared her voice. We just thought he was joking, you know, like how we do. Yeah, but we don't call ourselves soy sauce, plain face, or extras. Scoffed Siro. Nor do we attack our classmates for no fucking reason. Denki knew how bad it was right now, and betrayal clouded his mind. Even worse is that he knew there was a quirkless kid 2 years above him in his middle school, and knows how shit everyone was to them. They ended up committing suicide just before Denki moved into his second year in middle school. Sure, he was sad because a kid shouldn't be feeling like they have to end it all. They shouldn't be treated like that. He heard some of the rumors of how they gave the kid flowers, and threw their stuff in the trash, and stole them on purpose. They were getting blamed for nothing by teachers and adults alike throughout this whole thing. They stopped the conversation until Kirishima brought up a good fact. We should talk to Izubro. Maybe he could explain or something. After lunch, we can go to his room, suggested Jiru. Everyone nodded and started eating to avoid talking. Class after lunch didn't bother Izuku. Heroics was taught by Aizawa, though the Greenette wondered where All Might was, but never asked because seeing Eri smiling at him when he won the quirkless fights made him want to cry from happiness. After classes, everyone went to the dorms. Kirishima went up to him to ask him if he and the rest of his squad could talk to him, which Izuku agreed to. He crouched down near Eri to explain. Sweetie, I'm going to talk with some friends in my room. Is it okay if you stay with Momo and my friends? The little girl nodded, saying, Okay, Papa. Making anyone near them coo and melt at the adorable scene. Izuku's heart almost gave out, but he stayed strong. I'll be back in a bit. He nodded at his friends and went up the stairs to his floor to find Kirishima, Kaminari, Siro, Mina, and Jiru standing at his door, waiting for him. His heart was beating fast, hands clammy, but he kept a smile on his face to not show his nervousness. Though he supposes Jiru knows from the look of concern she gave him. He waved her off and opened the door, letting them in. Since Kamino, Izuku felt guilty about All Might. Plus the nightmares didn't help, so he took down most of his posters and hid them in a box next to his bed. There was no way he was going to take them to his Mo and Ko's house, so he was thankful for the dorms. Kirishima was the one to ask him about the whole story. But Izuku couldn't say too much without revealing everything, so he summarized. He told them when he got his diagnosis and what happened after. Told them how Inko treated him differently too without saying too much that would give it all away they weren't as close as his group. But he could tell Kaminari understood. Then spoke about school with vague mentions of what he went through. After that, he told them about how his dad, though he said Sasaki-san, instead of dad, found out and involved a few heroes. By the end of the talk, most of them were crying. Mina was hugging him. Kirishima looked heartbroken at the reveal of his best friend, which made Izuku's heart ache in return. Why couldn't Bakugo be his friend? What was so special about Kirishima? What did the red-haired guy have that he didn't? They each apologized to him, but he said it wasn't their fault. If the adults didn't notice, how could they? And yeah, sure, Izuku was a tiny bit bitter over that fact, so he didn't blame them. The talk exhausted them, but they still went downstairs to eat. Momo and Aoyama, surprisingly Sato was better at baking because the one time he cooked, he used sugar instead of salt, and vanilla extract instead of soy sauce. That was an interesting experience since half the class got food poisoning for some reason. The rest just puked it out, were good at cooking, so they took it upon themselves to make dinner for everyone. The class sat around, with an extra seat for Eri between Izuku and Tenya, and ate. Dinner only took so long, because they almost started a food fight. Though one look from the Greenette made them stop. After all, he had to look after erasers, and a food fight wasn't the best thing to have right now. At around 11, after convincing Tenya to watch a movie. Even though he enjoyed the snacks and the bonding, they went to their respective rooms. Eri was still attached to him, so he held her until she fell asleep. When Izuku fell asleep, he found himself in One for All's mind, with the vestiges looking at him and the small, blurry yellow light expectantly. Oh, he still hasn't explained the bond quirk to Eri. or told Dad about his actual power percentage. Oh well, that was a problem for future Izuku. Izuku was nervous. When Tsukachi told him he could stay at home during the hearing, he denied wanting that and opted to go with his Murai-san, Aizawa, Hawks, and All Might. He wanted to face Inko and make her realize how shit of a mother she'd been to him. He wanted to see his school shut down and arrested. He was slowly turning into Nezu. Not that he minded much. After promising Eri that he'd come back, he left with the others to drive to the destination. His nerves were acting up, his heart racing fast, but he took a deep breath and went in the court. The Foresight hero put a hand on his shoulder to comfort him and let him in. He could see everyone who wronged him. Inko, the teachers at his old school, the principal of said school, and some parents who were there in support of their kids. But Izuku wasn't nervous as he looked at who was next to him. His family. And in the back of his head, he could feel the presence of 7 ghosts encouraging him. Izuku and his Damurai-san sat up in front next to Tsukachi and their lawyer. The others sat behind them to observe. Since the case was about Izuku himself, all of them were joined together. Inko, the school, and some +1s who got unlucky enough to be part of all of this. The first fight was with Inko, and it started brutally. She accused him of lying, making up stories about her. Then she victimized herself and made it look like he was the one who made her life a living hell. The people on her side of the court kept nodding and gasping, as if she wasn't lying about every detail she spewed out. Over and over again he heard her words. Quirkless. Brat. Ungrateful and selfish. So mean to me. Lost all my friends and job because of him. He heard them before. Why does it still hurt the same? Her lawyer, who was clearly not a good one, agreed with her in the worst possible way. Your Honor, it is a shame she ended up with a gene-less kid. Because of him, she has lost her social life and her friends. On and on it was an insult in his way. Murray-san was angry, so were the others, but he focused on looking at Inko. Because how could a mother give birth to a small child and be cruel to him? How could a mother not love her own son, regardless of whether or not he has a quirk? It should be second nature, but not everything is good in life. At least, not with her. Once her side finished speaking, their lawyer stood up and gave a strong start. Not letting any evidence go by, they showed every picture of Izuku's scars, and he was warned about the pictures. Tsukachi told him about how bad they were, but he sees them in the mirror every day, so it should be the same. It wasn't. The embarrassment and shame he felt when he knew everyone was watching. Looking at his scarred body, seeing his weaknesses, though nothing compared to the pained expressions of Murai-san, Aizawa, and All Might. Izuku felt the ghost sadness within his quirk, and he thanked every ounce of his being that he could turn off Eri's connection with him for just a bit. Otherwise, everything he was feeling, she would feel. When the hearing with his mother ended, they were instructed to wait 10 minutes before the jury made a final decision. They stayed seated since the judge said that before the hearing with his school, they have half an hour's break so he could rest. After the 10 minutes that were full of tension, the judge declared Inko Midoriya guilty. Izuku broke down crying in Murai-san's arms. He didn't care about anything other than one thing. He was free from her. He could live with Murai-san and Aizawa. What if he could live with both? Eri would love that. They went outside for a breath of air. Izuku stayed at Murai-san's side, clinging to him. Not that the man minded much, because he put his arm around Izuku's shoulders with just as much force. The green-haired boy liked the warmth. When the break ended, he tensed before Aizawa ruffled his hair and told him that he has nothing to worry about. That they were going to win this case. And Izuku believed him. The second fight was just as brutal, just as cruel. But it didn't hurt as much since none of the people here were living with him or related to him. It still stung. This time, however, the judge made a quick decision on declaring them guilty and shutting down the school. Some teachers were left off with community service, and others were put in jail. The parents of the kids weren't punished, since they had nothing to do with the abuse itself. The kids were also given community service, since Izuku didn't want to press any charges against them. Murai-san and Aizawa were perplexed when he told them that, but they respected his decision. Still, some students were blacklisted from hero schools, others were expelled from their current schools, and so on. At the end of the trial, the judge stood up and apologized to Izuku for what he went through, and how cruel the world was to kids who can't help but be born different. Izuku smiled at them with tears in his eyes. He has been worried that the judge would be unfair, but Tsukachi reassured him that they were one of the fairest judges they work with. The detective admitted to working with him in the past on every child abuse case he ended up with. Izuku was still in Murai-san's hold as they went back to the car. Sakachi, All Might, and Nezu had some work to do, so they left in another car. Hawks didn't have anything and Izuku happily offered to come with them. After making sure it was okay with Mira-san and Aizawa, they all sat in the car with Mira-san driving, Aizawa in the passenger seat next to him, Hawks sitting in the back with an exhausted Izuku next to him. When they arrived home, Izuku quickly got out of the car, murmuring one word as he ran to the door, suddenly energetic. The others in the car sighed fondly as they heard the word Eri. Yamada opened the door, just as ecstatically with a small white-haired child on his feet. Izuku slid on his knees and opened his arms, making her run up and hug him. Look, we decorated our room. Come see, she said excitedly, taking his hand and dragging him to their room. She opened the door with an equally excited Bubbles behind. The room was everything he dreamed to have. It had 2 beds on opposite walls, with a nightstand on the left side and the right side for the other. The window was in the middle with a desk under it. Another desk was propped up across the left bed on the wall. A twin library on the other side of the other bed. Yamada-san's voice perked up. We left the walls bare for you to put up anything you want, little listener. We can go shopping next weekend if you want. When Izuku started crying from happiness, everyone smiled fondly. Murai-san, can we talk? The man must have heard the nervousness in his voice, because his voice was gradually softer. What's wrong, kid? He said after leading him to the lone couch to sit on. Remember when talked about my quirk, and how you're setting up a better training schedule to improve and see the full potential of it? Yes, I do. I have to apologize though, he chuckled. The case has been quite a distraction, so I haven't had time to make a schedule. It should be done by tomorrow. But you won't start it for at least another week, since you need the rest. Thank you, Murai-san. But that's the thing, I've improved more than you know. HM? You see, the thing is. At the end of their talk, Murai-san was holding his head in his hands. Murai-san, are you okay? You know, kid, maybe we shouldn't have underestimated you in terms of power. I keep forgetting how strong and capable you are. The man ignored the flustered student trying to downplay the compliment and continued. You'll help me with the schedule then. That way you'd know what's best for you. But you're still not touching work within a 10-foot pole until you are rested. He said the last sentence while glaring softly at the boy who almost started complaining. Yes, Murai-san. Izuku smiled as the man before him ruffled his hair. Life quickly started looking up for Izuku. Always waking up to see Aizawa and Yamada in the dorms, eating breakfast together, playing with Eri before school, and seeing his friends. He also sees Murai-san and Bubbles on the weekend, Hawks for training, Nezu for analysis, and so on. The ghosts helped immensely too. They visited him when he was sleeping, always keeping an eye on him, and helping him with his quirk. Aizawa groaned when Izuku revealed his quirk, but stayed to help. The thing he was most proud of thought was Eri. A few weeks of therapy showed Eri improving, so they started to homeschool her before sending her to school the next year. Izuku doesn't get to help much with that since he has his own work to focus on, but he tries his best. His friends had been great in the last few weeks, showing him affection more and making him happy. It wasn't that long before everyone else started doing the same. They knew that the villain attacks won't stop after the Shai Hasaki case. The League of Villains was still out there. But that hasn't and won't stop them from winning the fights. They're stronger together. After Izuku deemed his life well, he started showing interest in dating. Bubbles and Yamada were happy to help. But he couldn't help but feel as though they were hiding something about it. Maybe it has to do with the fact that Bubbles saw them on the date the other day. Oh well, Izuku was happy, and that was all that mattered. Meanwhile, in another place, Mirio was visiting the Nighteye agency to collect the rest of his stuff. Then Nighteye stormed into his building. The blonde wanted to ask him what was wrong, but before he could, Nighteye said, "You're fired," and continued to power walk to the elevator. Mirio held a confused expression on his face, turning left and right to see if the man was talking to another employee. But there wasn't anyone other than him and Sedaptor. Then Bubble Girl came in looking like a crazy person. She grabbed Mirio by the shoulders and reassured him. It's okay. He just saw Izuku kissing his date. Don't worry, you're not fired. Sir, please reconsider your plans for murdering the poor kid. She went running after him, but used the stairs since she missed the elevator. Mirio looked around and stared at an unfazed Sedaptor. But I don't even work here, he asked, only to receive a shrug in return. What was happening? As much as Izuku hated his scars, it showed that he survived in the end. He got the lucky end of the stick, as the other kids didn't. Sure, They were some bad days when Izuku woke up from nightmares. He had panic attacks sometimes, and he cried some days. But his family helped him through it all. He felt lucky. He was lucky to have them by his side. Oh, how he wished he could reassure his kid self that everything will really be okay in the future. Recovery was a long road, but he wasn't crossing it alone.